So now we're going to go ahead and call the governing board meeting to order. The date is Thursday, June 15th. The time is 9:05. Before we get started, I'm going to go ahead and reiterate what we just heard from Supervisor Couch. We will do our best to facilitate a smooth meeting with public participation via Zoom and webcast. Before we begin, there are some important guidelines and general instructions for the meeting. Please silence your other communication devices, such as your cell phone. During the meeting, all public participants will be placed on mute by the host. Public members will not be able to mute or unmute manually. Audio for members of the public will be unmuted once they are recognized to make a public comment. After each agenda item, the chair will announce public comment and the clerk will recognize any public attendees who have indicated they wish to speak. With that, I would ask everyone to please stand. I'm going to ask Member Bessinger to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
Saw their lips moving. I was
Thank you, Member Bessinger. You can always tell there's a delay in Modesto.
Well,
As you guys finished about 2 seconds after us, which is, okay, we're going to get that fixed one of these days, for sure. All right, do I have to do another roll call? Yes, roll call, please.
okay, good morning. Mr. Bessinger?
Here.
Mr. Couch?
Here.
Miss Escucha Brayton? Miss Lewis?
Here.
Mr. McCauley?
Here.
Mr. Mendez?
Here.
Dr. Pacheco Warner? Mr. Pereira?
Present.
Mr. Preciado?
Here.
Mr. Reyna?
I'm here.
Mr. Rickman?
Here.
Mr. Robinson? Dr. Sheriff?
Here.
Ms. Schicklien?
Here.
Mr. Chiesa?
I am here.
Through the chair, we have a quorum.
Thank you very much. And I know Dr. Pacheco Warner will be a few minutes late, as Rosa Scudia-Braden. I think they had some other engagements that they are expected to be here. Move on to item number 4, approval of the consent calendars, items 17 through 26 in our agenda packet. And would any member like to comment or pull any of the items? Anyone, any public members looking to comment?
Are there any members of the public in Bakersfield that would like to comment?
No comment in Bakersfield.
Thank you. Are there any comments from the public in Modesto?
No public comment in Modesto.
Thank you. Are there any members of the public in Fresno that would like to comment? Seeing none, and there are no indication of online comments.
Up to motion?
Move to approve. Second.
We have a motion. We have a second.
Okay,
Roll
take
call.
Mr. Bessinger,
Yes.
Mr. Couch,
Yes.
Ms. Lewis,
Yes.
Mr. McCauley,
Yes.
Mr. Mendez,
Yes.
Mr. Pereira,
Aye.
Mr. Preciado,
Yes.
Mr. Reyna,
Yes.
Mr. Rickman,
Yes.
Dr. Sheriff,
Yes.
Ms. Schicklien,
Aye.
Mr. Chiesa.
Aye.
Through the chair, motion passes.
Thank you again. On to item 5. This is a public comment period. Opportunity for anyone to speak on any item that is not on today's posted agenda. Please make sure it's within the subject matter jurisdiction of the Air Board. We do limit your comments to 3 minutes. And do we have any public comments?
Are there any public comments in Bakersfield?
No public comment in Bakersfield.
Thank you. Are there any public comments in Modesto?
No public comment in Modesto.
Are there any members of the public in Fresno that would like to comment? There are no members in the audience here, and there's no indication of online comments.
All right. On to item 6, a report on the district's Citizens Advisory Committee activities.
Am I on?
You are.
Good morning, members of the board. My name is Derek Williams. I've had the pleasure of serving on the CAC since 2010, and I'm filling in for Manny today as he's back east. I just wanted to give you a brief report on our last meeting, CAC meeting. We had an excellent meeting. Great report from Shiraz on the updates on what's been going on with the board. That was rather lengthy and very informative. It was a very good report. Jessica Olson, Jamie Holt, and Emily Newland did their normal great jobs giving us updates on their different projects and the areas that they're working in. If you referring you to in your packet, if you go ahead and review those at your leisure, I would probably only want to bring up the one issue, and that was the update on the state advanced clean fleets regulation. That was an interesting one. We actually used half the meeting on that one item. Out of the 16 board members or CAC members that showed up, 13 had concerns or comments or input. And but we did get through it. If you have an opportunity to go to the website and bring up the YouTube recording on there, it is kind of interesting. It ran from 10:27 in the morning until 11:26, so about an hour, which was basically half the meeting. Most of the comments and so forth were at the second half of that time, but it would be interesting if you have time to do that. Everything went, other than that, was very, very smooth, and even that was very smooth. We just had a lot of interest and involvement from members, which is always good. Always like to see that. And with that, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Okay, any questions for Derek? Seeing none. Thank you very much, Derek.
Thank you, folks.
All right, going to move on to item 7, adopt the district's 2023-24 recommended budget. And if just for the public's edification, we went in great detail at our last board meeting in discussions, and hopefully it's not going to be nearly as long.
Yeah, so thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, board members. This is the final step, as a reminder, in the budget process. We are required to take action on the budget here at the June board meeting. As you mentioned, in May 18th, the board and the public did hear a detailed presentation about the budget. The purpose of that hearing was strictly to take public comment. There was to be no action at that meeting. And as you mentioned, quite a lengthy discussion about the budget. Just in summary, to give you the quick version of the presentation, the recommended budget is balanced with adequate reserves and contingencies. The resources that are in the budget are being designed to fulfill our public health mission. And so we went through a lot of detail talking about, through the zero-based budgeting process that we employ here, how we intend on using these funds to keep moving the ball forward with respect to clean air activities and fulfilling our mission. We can go through the presentation again. We're prepared to do it. The tradition has been to not go through the detailed presentation again, but of course we are prepared to do that. The item is before you for action today, and we'll turn it back over to you, Mr. Chair and board members, for your recommended next steps.
So are there any board member comments and or questions regarding the budget? Did you check in? Okay, we're going to go to public comment.
Okay, are there any members of the public in Bakersfield that would like to comment?
No comment in Bakersfield.
Thank you. Are there any public comments in Modesto?
No public comment in Modesto.
Thank you. Are there any members of the public here in Fresno that would like to comment on this item? We do have indication of one comment.
Welcome.
Hello. Good morning, board members. My name is Andrea Uribe, and I'm a policy advocate for Leadership Council in Madera County. And on this item, I'd like to ask for an adjustment in the budget to set aside additional funds from the reserves for contingency to keep the Clean Air Rooms program running and have additional funds to keep funding this program in the future. Thank you.
Okay, appreciate that comment.
And Mr. Chair, board members, I really appreciate the comment. With respect to the Clean Air Rooms program, we do have a recommendation on the agenda today that's related, I think, to that suggestion to increase funding in the program. It is certainly something that's been a priority of the board. You'll hear more about that program later and what we hope to continue doing into the future with it. So I think just generally speaking, there is interest in continuing to further that. And we have worked closely with Leadership Council and others to make sure that residents in Lavinia and other communities are accessing those funds. We've seen a lot of demand in that program. Just wanted to note that we have an item on the agenda that will be a great place to continue talking about that. Appreciate the comment that was made for sure.
Yeah, thank you.
Is there any other members of the public that would like to comment? Seeing none and no indication of online comment at this time.
Member Bessinger?
I just want to say for the record that I did miss last meeting, but I have reviewed the budget materials and I'm prepared to vote.
It's okay, we can go through it again.
Not.
Second that.
Okay, so I'm going to bring it back and for the record, I'd like to acknowledge Dr. Pacheco Warner is here. I'll entertain a motion, questions? comments?
I'll make a motion.
Okay,
Second.
so motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Mr. Bessinger?
Yes.
Mr. Couch?
Yes.
Ms. Lewis?
Yes.
Mr. McCauley?
Yes.
Mr. Mendez?
Yes.
Dr. Pacheco Warner?
Yes.
Mr. Pereira?
Aye.
Mr. Preciado?
Yes.
Mr. Reyna?
Yes.
Mr. Rickman?
Yes.
Dr. Sheriff?
Yes.
Ms. Schicklin?
Aye.
Mr. Chiesa?
Aye.
Through the chair, motion passes.
Great. Thank you again. Great presentation last month. We're going to move on to item 8, accept and appropriate $30,400,000 in state vehicle replacement funding and approve the continued implementation of the district's Drive Clean in the San Joaquin Vehicle Replacement and Repair Program.
All right. Good morning,
Good morning.
Mr. Chairman and members of the board. My name is Brian Dodds. I'm a program manager in our Grants and Incentives Department. It's my pleasure to be here with you this morning. So, as your board is aware, reducing mobile source emissions is a key strategy to meet federal air quality standards, and the district has no regulatory authority over these sources. So the district's voluntary incentive programs play a key role in reducing mobile sources of emission in order to reach our air quality goals. Our Valley low income and priority population residents are most impacted by older vehicles with higher emissions and fuel costs. The district's Drive Clean in San Joaquin program provides Valley residents with options for reducing emissions from passenger vehicles, with a focus on low income and disadvantaged communities throughout the Valley. The district's vehicle repair program provides Valley residents with options for reducing emissions from their vehicles with funding for smog-related repairs. And this program is implemented in partnership with Valley Clean Air Now. Traditionally, the program has been implemented through weekend events held throughout the Valley where vehicles are screened to determine the likelihood of failing a smog test, and owners of high-emitting vehicles are provided vouchers for up to $850 in vehicle emission repairs. These vouchers are redeemed at participating STAR-certified smog shops and cover the cost of smog test, diagnostic time, and the emissions-related repairs. Vehicles with lapsed registrations are able to complete their registration process once the vehicle repairs are completed and the vehicle passes the smog test. In response to the COVID-19 pandemic, the district and Valley CAN developed a new program model which allowed participants the opportunity to contact Valley CAN directly in order to be issued a voucher and schedule a visit to a smog shop. This new program model allowed the district to continue providing incentive funding to residents most in need. Weekend events were able to resume in June of 2021, while outreach efforts continue to focus on small rural communities and disadvantaged communities throughout the Valley. Over the last year, the district has provided funding for over 16,000 repairs through the program, and the weekend events continue to provide an opportunity to engage with residents on other programs that they might be eligible for, including vehicle replacement, our lawnmower replacement programs, and our fireplace program. The district's vehicle repair program has been recognized through the years for our ability to effectively connect with residents in need while also ensuring emission reductions. The UCLA Luskin Center for Innovation released a report applauding the district's program implementation, including the environmental and economic benefits of the program. In addition, a May 2021 report commends the district efforts in reaching disadvantaged communities in our implementation of the vehicle replacement program. California's fourth climate change assessment report also recognizes the vehicle repair program and states that vehicle emissions in the San Joaquin Valley are decreasing and that the program is a model of balancing efficiency and equity. These pictures just represent activities at the weekend events. If you haven't had a chance to go to one, they're very well attended, very efficiently run. There's vehicles getting smog tested multiple times, and it's just a really great community engagement activity. The 2023-24 budget includes $12 million in funding for the implementation of the repair program, which includes the cost of vehicle repairs, as well as event-related expenses and program administration. We are proposing to hold 16 events throughout the Valley in the next fiscal year, as well as continue the implementation of the direct participation process. We expect that the program funding can support approximately 19,000 vehicle repairs. Moving on to our vehicle replacement component, in 2014, the board approved a groundbreaking pilot program that was implemented in conjunction with our Tune-In Tune-Up vehicle repair program. This pilot program served as a model for what has now become the state's Clean Cars for All program. Since 2015, we've received over $57 million in state funding to operate our vehicle replacement program. Historically, incentives available through the program have ranged from $2,500 up to $9,500, and they depend on the income level of the participant, their status in a disadvantaged community, and the type of replacement vehicle that is being purchased. To date, we've replaced over 4,600 high-polluting vehicles with cleaner and more fuel-efficient models, with new vehicles being electric, plug-in, electric, and hybrid vehicles. In September 2021, the board approved changes to the program criteria to increase eligibility to 2006 and older vehicles, while also removing a requirement to have an emissions failure. These changes have resulted in significant program growth and demand of program funds by Valley residents. This slide represents the vehicles that we've replaced over the last year. In addition to a couple of pictures of participants with their new vehicles, it's always great to see their excitement and happiness at their old vehicle. And so we're really happy with the way the program is able to engage with Valley residents most in need of these vehicle replacements. The district has recently received additional grant awards from CARB for an additional $30.4 million in program funds, which includes funding for the vehicle purchases as well as program administration costs. These project funds associated with the grants will support the replacement of over 2,000 vehicles. As our program partner, Valley CAN, will be responsible for program management and oversight, outreach, applicant assistance, coordinating vehicle purchases, and reporting program info to the district. These new grant agreements will help support existing applications as well as new applications that we can receive for the program, and we anticipate accepting applications for this funding later this summer. These recent grant agreements from CARB include some programmatic changes, and including increased incentive levels up to $12,000, expansion of program eligibility to low-income residents outside of disadvantaged communities, the removal of traditional hybrid vehicles after 2024, as well as additional data collection requirements and an increase in program administration expenses. District staff will continue to work closely with CARB to ensure an effective transition to these newly approved program incentive levels and requirements. There's also an opportunity for additional funding in the next fiscal year through the state budget process and CARB's funding plan. So we will also continue to advocate for the Valley receiving a fair share of these important funds. Outreach for the vehicle repair and replacement program utilizes a grassroots, community-driven approach to reaching low-income and disadvantaged community residents throughout the Valley. Weeknight community-based events, which are held at a local business or a public space, are a great opportunity to engage community members about our programs. In addition, we have utilized partnerships with community-based organizations to communicate program information through existing networks, as well as social media to conduct localized outreach to connect with residents. This approach to program outreach has resulted in very high levels of participation throughout the district's disadvantaged communities, with more than 98% of the Valley's disadvantaged communities having participated in the vehicle replacement and repair programs. With that, the recommendations are here before you. It'll conclude my presentation. We'd like to invite Tom Knox, through the board chair, from Valley Clean Air Now, to say a few words about the program as well.
Good morning, Chair and board members. I'm Tom Knox of Valley Clean Air Now. Thank you so much for your support. I believe this is the 12th time I've been here at the June board meeting to thank you for your support. The growth and success of this program are really due to two unique factors. First of all is the involvement of the board. We've had so many of you out at our events. So many of you have helped to find locations, do outreach in your communities. You've all been so involved in ensuring that your communities really realize the benefits of this program at the local level. So thank you for that, and just for your ongoing support of the budget and the growth over the years. The major factor, though, is the creativity and flexibility of your staff. Samir, Todd, Brian, Carrie, and literally dozens of other staff members have really taken it to the next level this past year. This has been our best year ever because everyone has really focused in on how to make the system work right, how to make everything optimal, how to speed everything up, how to make it just more impactful to customers. So we really, really appreciate the partnership here, and we're really proud of the role that we can play in cleaning up the Valley's air. So thank you all.
Thank you, Tom.
Don't go away.
Yes. Yeah, I think we have a couple people who'd like to ask some questions. Dr. Sheriff.
For Tom. And likewise, can't thank you enough, Tom, for all that you've done over the years to make this work, to adapt, to advocate, and to bring those parties together so that this incredible work can be done. One question on page 11 on the, and maybe this is for staff, but I'm interested in your thoughts too. So the CARB program changes are going to include removing hybrid vehicles in 1224. And I'm wondering if you anticipate any problems in terms of demand or outreach as a result of that.
Yeah, sure. So that CARB rule change had some flexibility in it. It doesn't go into effect for another 18 months. There's been increased demand constantly over the past few years. We're back to pre-COVID sales levels now. The big problem is vehicle inventory just isn't there yet. So unfortunately, we've seen our rate of hybrid sales actually increase over the past 6 to 8 months. There's a lot more hybrids out there than there are plug-in vehicles. They're also sometimes more affordable. So we'd love to see people get into plug-in vehicles. The hybrids do provide a really decent solution for customers who are driving very old, dirty vehicles. It's not a perfect solution, but it is so much better than their reality right now.
Thank you. Member Mendez.
Yeah, Tom, I want to thank you. You know, one of the, this is like the perfect partnership. I mean, when you guys do events and stuff, I mean, it's so well run. You're so organized, so this is a deal that it works because it's a great partnership with what you do and what our staff does. And I mean, you guys go through a tremendous amount of vehicles every time you do this. And it's just amazing. And I want to thank you.
Thank you.
Member Vice Chair Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One question for my clarification, the removal of traditional hybrid vehicles by 1224, does that mean that this program will no longer fund purchasing those vehicles for people who do not want to go fully electric?
I don't want to contradict anything staff would say here, but yes, that would remove that as an option for purchase within the program. Brian?
Yeah, through the chair, that's our understanding and the requirements currently outlined in the grant agreements and CARB's funding plan is that after December 31st, 2024, traditional hybrid vehicles would not be an option for participants. Plug-in hybrids and battery electrics, correct, would be the main criteria. And we're working to ensure that there's a supply of battery electric and plug-in hybrid vehicles that will be available for participants.
Okay,
And we'll
so-
continue to communicate and work with CARB to ensure that the program is effective in meeting the needs of participants.
Right. So there's still money available for the hybrids right now?
Correct. And we're going to continue to do that and meet the needs of the residents all the way through up until any deadlines that we've got.
And I have another question of staff. I see that most of the event, well, all of the events are being held at fairgrounds within the various counties. Now, in Merced County, we have two fairgrounds. They're, one's under the state agriculture, the other is a county fair. But I have seen where we switched off to allow the fair on the west side, which encompasses a few of our cities, to have the event there. And then the Merced Fair, which is where most of the cities are within the county on the north side. So I'd like to recommend that we alternate the Merced County fairs so that people aren't having to drive, 30 plus miles to get into Merced from the south side of the county to the north part. And let that be every other event, if that's possible. And that's it. Thank you.
Yes.
I think that's always been the intent, to try and move it around as much as possible, but to make sure you can get the volume of vehicles. So good suggestion. And the same thing, I encourage all the new board members, if you have not been to an event, you need to show up. Again, I agree with Supervisor Mendez's view. It is a great partnership. It is almost the perfect partnership. I'm never sure there's a perfect partnership, because I've been married a few times. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding again. I just say things like that to be funny. People have to understand me. I see. But it truly, the organization, you see the people, it's not based on income level, but most of the people are in need, right? That's why they show up. They have vehicles. Our job as a public health agency is to clean up the air, and here's these events, 300 or 400 people, you get them through in no time, and it is truly a remarkable event. So please go out and take a look. And I think the next time we're going to be down in Turlock in my district in Stanislaus County and at the fairgrounds. So it'll be a great look. Member Bessinger.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to congratulate the military precision that you guys put these things on. It's pretty impressive. People, especially businesses now, are complaining they're having difficulty getting employees. And this program helps folks get their cars squared away so that they can go to work. It's especially important for our disadvantaged communities, but I'm really happy to see that CARB is finally expanding this to non-disadvantaged communities, because you shouldn't be penalized because you live in a zip code. I would challenge folks that maybe think that that's an improper statement. Go to a senior living village inside your community. A lot of our seniors are driving 20-plus-year-old cars, which eventually they're going to have a hard time smogging. And especially with seniors, if they lose their transportation option, it becomes a crisis for them. We had a gentleman here in Clovis that I helped connect to get his truck taken care of. It got smogged. And during COVID, he could not renew his driver's license. The DMV setup was so prohibitive, he couldn't do it. His license is no longer valid. He uses the Clovis Transit to go back and forth to a to an establishment to have lunch and a cocktail 5 days a week. And he told me that that operation, that ability to get out of the house for a couple of hours, socialize with folks, has saved his life. Those were his words. This has saved my life. And being able to expand this to other communities, because there's going to be always people who, well, my in-laws, they moved to Clovis in 1960 when Clovis was not referred to as an affluent community, which I think is a big crock anyway. But you have old folks that are still in the house they bought in 1960. Now, my mother-in-law is a widow. She lives on a fixed income of Social Security and her savings from working all her life. She should be able to take advantage, not that she needs it, because we take care of all her other needs. But if she needed this program, she couldn't get it. And that unfortunately does apply to some of our other programs. So I would ask that when staff is looking at these programs for disadvantaged communities, that we find a way to get this into other communities that aren't quote unquote disadvantaged, but we have people who would meet the eligibility requirements if they lived in that zip code, because it's unfair to not be able to give this to other people. And I'll get off my log right now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good comments. I apologize to my wife. She sent me a text already. She must watch this. Just kidding. She didn't again. Very good. No more comments from the board. How about we go to the public?
Okay, do we have any public comment in Bakersfield?
No public comment in Bakersfield.
Thank you. Any public comment in Modesto?
No public comment in Modesto.
Thank you. Are there any members of the public in Fresno that would like to make a comment? Seeing none in office, we do have one online. Anthony Molina.
Welcome, Anthony.
Good morning. Hi, this is Anthony Molina. I'm the chair of the Fresno County Bicycle Coalition, and I want to thank you all for your efforts to clean our air and to adopt clean vehicle guidelines. But I would like to offer a suggestion for improving the clean vehicle replacement program with the addition of e-bikes as an alternative to other electric vehicles because of the advantages especially for low-income disadvantaged communities in terms of the high vehicle costs of electric vehicles. That e-bikes offer a very affordable alternative for commuting, as well as for other day-to-day activities. Particularly e-cargo bikes now are very, very much a very good alternative for growing families to get around. And I would also point out the advantages for the availability of all age groups, the younger and older individuals who may not be able to drive anymore, as mentioned by Mayor Bessinger. This it offers alternatives for 8 to 80 use of e-bikes as an alternative. So anyway, I would also like to point out that e-bike incentives are available through the Clean Vehicle Replacement Program, and other municipalities, particularly in the Bay Area, offers that as an alternative to electric vehicles. So please consider e-bikes in your program for clean vehicle replacement. It also offers another advantage in terms of reduction of congestion because e-bikes don't take up as much parking space or room on the roadway. So in terms of reducing congestion on our roadways, which will actually benefit all road users, I would strongly urge you to add e-bike incentives to the Clean Vehicle Replacement Program. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your comments, Anthony. Brian?
Yeah, through the chair, if I could just respond and appreciate the comment from Anthony. The grant agreement does allow for alternative mobility options for participants, including e-bikes. As part of the process of going through this program, Valley Can does engage with residents about what's going to work for their needs. People need to be able to get to work and commute and things like that. So we just need to make sure that whatever they do, it's going to support their family needs at the end of the day.
So the flexibility is already built in. That's
correct.
Right. Yes. Again, Anthony, thank you for your comments.
No further comments online.
Okay. Bring it back to the board. Oh, move approval. Move approval.
Second.
Move second. Call the roll, please.
Okay. Mr. Bessinger?
Yes.
Mr. Couch?
Yes.
Ms. Lewis?
Yes.
Mr. McCauley?
Yes.
Mr. Mendez?
Yes.
Dr. Pacheco Warner?
Yes.
Mr. Pereira?
Aye.
Mr. Preciado?
Yes.
Mr. Reyna?
Yes.
Mr. Rickman?
Yes.
Dr. Sheriff?
Yes.
Ms. Shuglian?
Aye.
Mr. Chiesa?
Aye.
Through the chair, motion passes.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Tom, for coming in. We'll move on to item 9, adopt the 2023 maintenance plan and redesignation request for the revoked 1-hour ozone standard.
All right, thank you. Good morning, Chair, members of the board. I'm John Klassen, Director of Air Quality Science and Planning, and I'll be doing this presentation this morning to walk you through it. So we'll go ahead and jump into the first slide here to give you a bit of background on ozone. This maintenance plan is about ozone. So where does ozone come from? This is a formation of oxides of nitrogen, volatile organic compounds, or NOx and VOC. When these are present and they come in the presence of heat and sunlight, heat can speed up the chemical formation process. Sunlight, the photon energy from the sun can get that chemical formation process started. And so in the summertime, when it's hot, lots of sunlight, ozone formation can really speed up quickly. Where does NOx come from? This primarily comes from the combustion of fuels from mobile sources. VOCs, volatile organic compounds come from biogenic sources, plant life, consumer products, paints and solvents, stationary and mobile sources. And like I mentioned, this is really a summertime issue for us when we have a lot of heat, a lot of sunlight, and we have our peaks in the middle of the day when those two things are both at their peak. Exposure to high levels of ozone can have impacts on health, as we show in the image on the right-hand side, from burning eyes, irritated lungs, increased risk of heart attacks, headaches, and different issues when people are exposed to high levels. So to address the challenges of ozone in the valley, we have done a number of things here. Your board has adopted a number of plans over the decades to control emissions. We show this on the right-hand slide here, which we show quite a bit. It's in our boardroom showing how much has changed for NOx in the San Joaquin Valley, where we've seen about a 75% reduction in overall NOx through this period, about 40 years, with a 93% reduction in stationary source emissions. And this is important for both ozone and PM2.5, since NOx is the cornerstone of both of those strategies. On top of what we've done, CARB has adopted numerous mobile source control strategies to reduce emissions from mobile sources. And our effort and their effort together is the toughest emissions control program in the nation. On top of this, we have our very strong incentive program. Over $5 billion have been invested through public and private efforts. And through all these efforts, we continue to see a lot of improvement in air quality across the region. So looking specifically at ozone, what have we done to address the ozone standards over time? We have 4 ozone plans that are in place, some for the 8-hour ozone standard and one for the 1-hour standard, which is the subject of today's item. So up at the top of this slide, this standard was set in 1979. This is a 1-hour average standard. So your ozone values averaged over 1 hour, set at 124 parts per billion. We had a plan in 2013 that outlined the strategy to attain the standard. And we have attained the standard, and we always like to say that we are the first and only region in the nation to be designated extreme non-attainment, having the highest classification, having the greatest need for emissions reductions to then go on and attain that standard. So we're really proud of that. We then have 3 other plans in place for the 3 8-hour ozone standards: 84 parts per billion, 75 parts per billion, and 70 parts per billion. These 3 different plans were established in 2007, 2016, and 2022, respectively. We are on the verge of attaining that initial 8-hour standard that was set in 1997. We're very close to that. We're knocking on the door of that standard, and we're progressing towards attaining these other more stringent standards with those deadlines in 2031 and 2037. So with all of these efforts, we've continued to see big improvements in ozone across the valley. Just highlighting a few of these metrics here. Regarding the 1-hour ozone standard, we very rarely exceed that standard. It's very minimal. It's nearly 100% reduction in days, where in the past we would exceed the standard 60, 70 days during the year. Now it's very rare, and if we ever do, it's often because of wildfires. Wildfires can produce NOx and VOC that can overwhelm the valley, and then we see some higher ozone values than we normally see. For the 8-hour standards, we've also seen a significant change. For the initial 8-hour standard set at 84 parts per billion, we've seen an over 92% reduction in days over the standard, and then a 73% reduction and a 61% reduction in days over the 75 and 70 parts per billion standards, respectively. Something else we wanted to mention too, in the ozone season, roughly May to October, when we see our higher ozone values, looking at the last year in 2022, 82% of the days during that time period, we are meeting the ozone standard. So yes, we're still working towards meeting these standards. We have challenges in front of us, but the majority of the ozone season, we are meeting these standards, and we still need to look at that top 18% for this most stringent standard and continue to reduce those higher levels to meet this. If we were to look at the initial standards of 84 parts per billion, 75 parts per billion, we would be over 90% of the days during the summer season and the ozone season, we're meeting those standards. And the images here at the bottom of the slide just show the progression of improvements over this 20-year period through all of the planning and implementation of these strategies over time. Looking specifically at 8-hour ozone again, this is the official metric we use to determine whether we're in attainment of a standard. This is called the design value. It's kind of a worst case scenario for the valley, and even in this metric, you can see the progressively improving conditions across the valley. Going back 20 years, we used to see our design values close to 120 parts per billion. You can see this progressively come down. We are now right on the verge of attaining that 1997 standard of 84 parts per billion. And then you can see how much more progress we need to make to hit those other 2 standards in 2031 and 2037. Just a few points here now about 1-hour ozone. That's the focus of this plan this morning. We adopted an extreme attainment plan in 2004 and in 2013. EPA approved this plan in 2016. Through the year 2014, we were able to show that we've attained that standard based on air quality data. And we showed this here on the right-hand side, just showing how much has changed over time. I mentioned this earlier, but if you go back in time into the 1980s, into the 1990s, we used to have over 70 days per year we would exceed the standard. You can see this come down very aggressively over the years as we've continued to get emissions reductions and implement our strategies. Then if you look all the way on the right-hand side, you can see right around the 2012 to 2014 period, those numbers come all the way down to almost 0. That's where we were able to show for the first time we've attained that standard. And going forward in time, we've had minimal days where we've exceeded this, which is often due to wildfires or other issues. So we've continued to maintain this progress through this period. And this would not have been possible without the clean air investment by all the Valley stakeholders involved in our strategies over the years. So this maintenance plan that's before you today, why are we doing this? So we proposed this maintenance plan to meet the Clean Air Act requirements. And even though this 1-hour ozone standard was revoked by EPA, meaning it was pulled back when they established the 8-hour ozone standards, there are still different elements in place that EPA retains called anti-backsliding provisions, different planning elements we still need to meet, even though they've revoked that standard. Over the years, there have been court rulings that have helped define in the Clean Air Act what exactly is required for an area to redesignate or show this maintenance plan for a revoked standard, such as the San Joaquin Valley, since we now meet this standard. And there's been a series of things along the way that have provided clarity on that. So what we have before you today, this maintenance plan would transition the San Joaquin Valley from non-attainment to an attainment area for the standard, satisfying those specific provisions within the Clean Air Act. And what this would do for us would be when EPA approves of this maintenance plan, this would eliminate the non-attainment requirements for the 1 hour ozone standard that are still in place and meet the findings necessary to stop the collection of the Section 185 fees under our District Rule 3170, which has been in place since 2010. So what are the elements for redesignation? These are the 5 different elements that an agency must show in order for EPA to redesignate them to attainment of a standard. This is defined in the Clean Air Act. And I'll say a little bit more about these 5 different elements, but one of them is obvious. The first one, you must have shown that you've attained the standard with your air quality data. We've done that. Second one is that you must have an approved implementation plan under the Clean Air Act, meaning an attainment plan itself. We have that, and we have that approved. Number 3 is determining that the improvement in air quality is due to permanent and enforceable emissions reductions, meaning you're confident that you'll continue to stay below that standard level. And I'll say a bit more about that in the next slide. Number 4 is that you've met all of the applicable SIP requirements, which we have done in our attainment plan that was approved. And finally, number 5 is the maintenance plan itself, which has a few elements, which I'll talk about in just a minute. So to provide a little more detail on the third element, how do we know that our improvements in 1 hour ozone levels are permanent and enforceable? We included some details in our maintenance plan about this in the analysis. One of the points that we made was that the emissions reductions that we're achieving are through district and CARB regulations that are enforced. These are permanent. These are through rules and regulations the district has adopted here, that CARB has adopted for mobile sources, and these are enforceable, regulated changes that are happening over time. One of the other points that we made was that our improvements in 1 hour ozone are not due to unfavorable or unusual meteorology. We had to look at this last time period to make sure we didn't have really cool, breezy conditions throughout the entire time period. That's very abnormal. That's why we had an improved air quality. Was that really true or not? Looking closely at this during the past 10 years or so, we've had very hot summers, very stagnant conditions. We've had drought conditions, we've had wildfires, so a lot of challenging conditions for us for meteorology, so that is not something that helped us attain the standard. And then finally, the last element we looked at was that our improved ozone concentrations were not due to a temporary emission reduction, meaning were our emissions about the same? Did anything change drastically? We looked closely at gasoline sales, VMT throughout this entire period. That did not change drastically. And in fact, our emissions, we could argue, actually increased from the wildfires happened in the past few years with all the added NOx and VOC. We had an increase in emissions, yet we still show that we have continued to attain the standard. So through our analysis and our arguments here, we are confident that these are permanent and enforceable air quality improvements for 1 hour ozone. Now, just a few points here about the maintenance plan itself. This is the last element for redesignation. There are 5 elements that need to be shown within the maintenance plan itself: the attainment inventory, a maintenance demonstration, your air monitoring network discussion, verification of continued attainment, and contingency plan. And just to touch on each of these elements here briefly. The first element is the attainment inventory. This is where we need to establish what are the emissions of NOx and VOC at the time that you attain the standard. Get that set in place. We did this. This is included in a plan. And this is consistent with EPA's guidance on how we developed this. We used CARB's California Emission Projection Analysis Model, or CPAM, which is used for attainment planning. We used that model to get this together. And we started with the year 2020 to look at what our emissions were at that year and then project forward, which is the next step where you do the maintenance demonstration itself, where you look at your starting point for your emissions, which is at the bottom of the slide, that table that you see there. And then we look forward in time at our emissions, where it's projected to go over the coming years, looking at different growth and control, different things that could be changing during the planning process here. And you can see that going forward in time, NOx reductions continue to decrease, as well as VOC reductions. So we're not seeing our future levels go above where we are now, which is important to show. Just showing this here on a graph here. Orange there are the VOC emissions over time, and blue are the NOx emissions over time, showing that both are continuing to decrease through this period for this maintenance plan. One of the other elements was the verification of continued attainment, where we need to talk about what are we going to do to continue to watch this closely to make sure that we're going to continue to attain the standard. One of the points we make here is that we'll continue to develop attainment plans as needed, rules and regulations, enforce those. continue to collect air monitoring data and emissions data for the San Joaquin Valley to make sure that we're continuing to attain the standard with the data that we have in place. And that as we continue to update emissions inventories, make improvements, continue to watch that closely to make sure our future emissions aren't going to exceed where we are now, where we've attained the standard. Another element is the air monitoring network itself. As you know, we have an expansive air monitoring network throughout the San Joaquin Valley. We have 25 ozone air monitoring sites throughout that network, operated between us and CARB, the National Park Service. These are placed in various areas of high population, high pollution concentrations in urban areas or just downwind, background concentrations. So a good collection of different types of ozone monitoring happens, and this will continue to happen. We're committing to continue this, to continue to monitor ozone to make sure that we're continuing to attain this 1 hour ozone standard going forward in time. And so the last element of a maintenance plan is a contingency plan. So maintenance plans must also include a contingency provision, and this is to be put in place in case as we go forward in time, if we happen to violate the standard again, based on our data, what are we going to do to figure out what's going on and to get more emissions reductions to get us back into attainment. So within this plan, we commit and CARB commits to looking at our rules, our respective rules, to look for further NOx reductions where it's feasible to get those additional emissions reductions if we happen to violate the standard into the future. And we wanted to note here too that this would be outside of exceptional events. So if we have issues like wildfires giving us high ozone numbers, we would go down the path of exceptional events to do that documentation and work with CARB and EPA on that. But if we're happening to have high ozone levels that weren't impacted by exceptional events, we would look at our rules, figure out what we can do for more emissions reductions to get us back into attainment. And this would happen within an 18-month time period as a time commitment that we're committing to. So this plan was developed through a public process. We had a workshop in April. Materials were provided in English and Spanish. We had Spanish interpretation at the workshop. We provided updates to your board over the past year or so of the progression of this at the Citizens Advisory Committee, at the Environmental Justice Advisory Group. We worked with CARB and EPA on the elements required for this. We noticed the plan workshop to regulated entities, the AB 617 committees, to get their feedback. We posted this plan about a month ago on May 16th for a 30-day review, and we did not receive any significant comments through this period. So our recommendations this morning is to adopt the proposed 2023 maintenance plan and redesignation request for the revoked 1 hour ozone standard, authorize the chair to sign the attached resolution, and direct staff to forward this maintenance plan and the resolution to CARB for approval and submittal to EPA for their review. And that's it. We'd be happy to answer any questions.
So, John, this is a lot of work for something that, because we still have the 8 hour ozone standard in front of us, it seems almost impossible to backslide. I would say it's impossible to backslide, to not meet the standard, other than through extraordinary events. And that's what it appears to me. And we're doing all of this work and spending all this money when we could be investing it in programs that actually make a difference. Again, the work is tremendous, but as long as we have to meet the new 8 hour ozone standard, again, I can't even fathom how we could backslide. So appreciate all your work. I know you're doing this because we have to do it, but it just doesn't seem logical to me. Dr. Sheriff.
Thank you, and thanks again to staff for all their work on this. Two questions. One, well, why now? Because we could have thought about doing, well, I'm sure we thought about doing this before. But the other question, if you could clarify a little bit, page 8. So one of the results of doing this will be no longer collecting Section 185 fees. Could you explain that a little bit? And also thinking about what we use those fees for now and how we're going to adapt.
Let me take that, and John or others correct me or add more to the conversation on this through the chair. Just wanted to respond really quickly to Dr. Sheriff's questions. So and John, explained this at a high level during the presentation, but there has been a lack of clarity on the pathway for this. EPA had set out a path. There were some lawsuits, some court rulings that basically changed, that path to a different path. And it's just been recently, and we've talked to the board and the public about this in recent years about, that evolution and now having, basically a pathway that appears to work and be justified and defensible, with the rulings. Because again, it's all about that revoke standard and whether there's it's a redesignation versus at one point there was something called a maintenance plan or redesignation substitute process, and that so there's been an evolution of that over the last several years, and that's the main reason for that. And so here we are, I think, with a fully established pathway now for us to be able to move forward. And then on the 185 penalty or the fee side of it, the majority of what are called those Section 185 fees are being addressed through motor vehicle fees that are being collected, and the board programs those to the budget process. Those fees are used for emission reduction projects. They're dedicated fully to emission reduction projects. The elimination of this requirement does not in any way change the collection and use of those for emission reduction projects. So it's all that this simply does is eliminate the requirement that the underwriting essentially of those fees with for this particular requirement. There is a portion of these fees that are collected from certain emissions units and stationary sources. That obligation would also be gone for this standard. So it's complex, and it's kind of a combination of those that fully satisfy the 185 requirements. But those requirements are only in place due to that non-attainment status. By transitioning to attainment status, clearly we're in attainment. And now that we have a pathway to demonstrate that with the redesignation process, we would be eliminating essentially that requirement. But in no way does that change the ongoing collection of those fees are being collected, the motor vehicle fees, regardless of that requirement. The board has resolutions in place that collect those. Just do our ongoing attainment needs for the 8-hour ozone standards, the PM 2.5 standards. So in no way does this action change the collection or use of those fees.
Okay, so just bottom line, we still will be having income from those fees and using them.
Correct.
For the various. Great.
Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, we'll go to the public.
Is there any public comments in Bakersfield?
No public comment in Bakersfield.
Thank you. Are there any public comments in Modesto?
No public comment in Modesto.
Are there any members of the public in Fresno that would like to comment on this item? No comments in office and no indication of online comments.
Okay, back to the board for action.
Motion to approve.
There's a motion. All over the place. You call the roll, please.
Okay, Mr. Bessinger,
Yes.
Mr. Couch,
Yes.
Ms. Escucha Brayton,
Yes.
Ms. Lewis.
Yes.
Mr. McCauley,
Yes.
Mr. Mendez,
Yes.
Dr. Pacheco Warner,
Yes.
Mr. Pereira,
Aye.
Mr. Preciado,
Yes.
Mr. Reyna,
Yes.
Mr. Rickman,
Yes.
Dr. Sheriff,
Yes.
Ms. Schicklin,
Aye.
Mr. Chiesa.
Aye.
Through the chair, motion passes.
Thank you, John, for your report. We're going to move on to item 10, approve allocations of up to $1 million in additional funding for the Valley-wide Clean Air Rooms Residential Air Filtration Incentive Program.
Through the chair, just wanted to make record that Councilmember Escutia Brayton has joined us.
I'm sorry, I missed that. I did see that she's there. Welcome.
Awesome. Hello, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Good morning. My name is Jessica Olson. I am the Director of Community Strategies and Resources, and it is my pleasure to come before your board today for your consideration of allocating up to $1 million in additional funding for the successful launch of the Valley-wide Clean Air Rooms Residential Air Filtration Incentives Program. So in response to increasingly severe wildfire smoke impacts, our board has really started to ramp up our public health messaging on encouraging folks on and educating folks, I should say, on how to really protect their health in these episodic wildfire smoke impact times, especially during the summer season. And so part of that is educating and encouraging the public to use indoor air filtration devices to create clean air rooms within their homes so they can have access to clean air during these times within their homes and protect their public health. Several recent successful efforts in response to all of this by your board have been to provide free residential air filtration devices to residents living within disadvantaged communities in the Valley. So last summer, we launched a pilot program where we had about $250,000, so about 1,300 devices went out to Valley residents that lived in disadvantaged communities, and really building not only on the success, but the obvious need and interest in that program. Recently, some of the AB 617 communities that we've been working with saw the success of this program and decided to shift some funding within their SERPs, or the allocation that they get from the state, to fund a similar program just within their communities. And that's in Shafter, South Central Fresno, and in Stockton. And that is a move that your board approved in February. And so building on that discussion, we had a pretty robust discussion about the need for that valley-wide. And so in April, your board approved $1 million to launch a valley-wide program, very similar to the program that we did last summer, the difference being that we had enough funding for about 5,000 devices. We launched that program last Monday, and since then it's just been honestly wildly successful. Funding has been exhausted in almost every county. There are still a few, and we'll talk a little bit about the outreach needed there. But demand certainly remains high, and there are a lot of folks that have really benefited from this already in just a short amount of time. This is the status as of this morning. So I'm going to kind of just highlight a few things for you here. So if you recall, we allocated funding based on the proportional population of each county to the valley-wide population. So for example, Fresno County has about 24% of the population, so they got about 24% of the $1 million allocated. So if you look at the allocation amount and the number of units allocated, that was the goal of the program when we launched on Monday. The remaining units, so that final right column, that's the number of units that remain. Anything that's in parentheses, that is the number of folks that are on a wait list. That is negative to the amount allocated, meaning you can see here that just from folks on the wait list that were unable to get in just in the past week and a half, there are several folks that are eligible and ready to be a part of this program, and certainly allocating an additional amount of funding would allow them to be in the program. And something I'll note later, but I just think it's easier when the numbers are in front of you, you can see here, at least as it stands currently with the additional allocation, we would be able to fund all eligible participants that are currently on the wait list here. Something else I'll point out, just as a matter of some outreach we do need to do, it's clear that some counties exhausted the funding much quicker than others. And so we're certainly working with community partners and even media partners, and I think many of you, to make sure that the outreach in some of the counties like San Joaquin County continue, and we can continue to make sure that folks take advantage of this program. I also, because we mentioned the AB 617 program, I did want to update you on the status. It's a little bit different there, right? We're doing $1 million within a very small area for each one of these, and we definitely expected this to be a longer process, not to be exhausted as quickly, just because it's obviously fewer residents per the amount of money allocated there. But just for your knowledge and just to update you all, this is the status in each one of those AB 617 communities. And similarly, up in Stockton, we're working closely with folks to make sure we continue to catch up to the other AB 617 communities with the launch of this program. So as a reminder of how the program works, we provide free off-the-shelf residential air filtration devices that you just plug in to your wall. These are HEPA, so high efficiency particulate air filtration devices. They're meant to filter out that particulate matter that is created by wildfire smoke. And they are in a well-sealed environment, so a well-weatherized home, where the windows are properly sealed and the doors are properly sealed. They filter out more than 90% of the particulate matter. So they definitely come in various sizes and models. We make sure that the devices that we're using are CARB certified. So there is a process by CARB to make sure that they aren't creating issues. That can be an issue with some air filtration devices. But we make sure that they're approved, they're certified. And certainly with your board's approval today, we'll continue to implement it in the manner that we have been, including the same manner that we distributed per county based on population. The proposed funding level before you today is up to $1 million in additional funding. Eligible participants will continue to be residents, of course, within the district boundaries, but those living within that identified disadvantaged or low-income communities. And so we were careful to make sure that that's defined by Cal and Virus Screen. There's also new tools out there like EPA EJ Screen and other approved tools. So we're making sure that we're capturing all of the eligible participants by checking all of the different tools that are available to us. And of course, one of the things that's really kind of the only additional step folks need to provide us is a proof of residency. So the online application is pretty streamlined. One thing we do ask for is they upload some sort of bill or document that just proves that they live where they do, so we can just check it against the eligible boundaries. Funding distribution, as I mentioned, will continue to be first come, first served based on the county population breakdown, so we're not proposing to change any of that. And then, of course, depending on program demand, and as we've reported program demand today, funding might be shifted from counties that have insufficient demand if necessary. So we have already gone through a competitive solicitation because we did launch the program already. And in that competitive solicitation, we have partnered with a device manufacturer to purchase residential air filtration devices and one additional filter element for each resident. These are shipped directly to their homes, or at least the designated mailing address that they give us. And based on the cost of each unit, we expect to distribute an additional 5,000 devices to eligible residents. So it's a very highly efficient process. We don't have to take in any inventory. It goes straight to folks' homes. And like I mentioned, they also get an additional replacement filter. Based on the manufacturer's recommendations, if folks use this every single day, so continuous use, one filter should last them about 6 months. So this should get them about a year's worth of air filtration if, again, it's plugged in and it's continuously running. This is actually the device that we purchased this time. During the pilot program, we had a few different devices. We had a different partner. We now have one device, which not only allows us to sort of streamline the process, but also streamline our outreach when we talk about folks purchasing additional filters or how to use the device. It's now just one device for everyone through this new process. Like I mentioned before, if you saw that table, which is as of this morning, folks that are currently on the wait list, if this funding is approved, would be eligible to receive one and just kind of automatically get approved into the program. We'll, of course, continue to partner with agencies and organizations to identify eligible applicants and continue to make sure that the folks in communities where there's kind of funding that's still left over kind of spread the word, certainly up in San Joaquin County, as I mentioned. And then, of course, and sort of in response to the public comments that came earlier, we are continuing to seek additional state and federal funding. There are some IRA funds that are available that we've been seeking out, working with EPA to extend that reach of this program and make sure that we can continue to, extend the success, I should say, of all of the great work that we've been able to do just the past week. So the recommendations before your board today are to approve additional funding allocation for up to $1 million, and then as necessary, authorize the executive director, APCO, to enter into any agreements with equipment vendors if that's needed. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Okay, Dr. Pacheco-Warner.
Thank you. Thank you so much for this program and for all the outreach that staff has done and worked with the communities. I have a probably really obvious question, but is there a referral happening across the programs between the 617 and the other programs, so that if you get applicants that are in those boundaries, they get referred to the 617? And then I was also, so from the nods, I'll go to my next question. I'm wondering if you have any data on the geographic distribution of those that have been approved, like where you kind of, do you see, is there a spread, or is there particular communities that are being served? And I'm wondering if this might be helpful for us to help outreach as well, and then especially in those counties that still have their allotment still unmet, if we can help with that, if we had a little more granularity about as to where.
Just real quick, Jess nodded to your first question, just for the record, the answer is yes, but on the second part, we'll take a look at that And what we can do is, if we find that there's some major gaps in parts of the counties, maybe we can get the word out, so that you can all help with the outreach on that. So we are able to ultimately geocode and map this out. We don't have it in front of us today, but I think we'll go back and take a look and see if we can identify sort of where most of it's coming from. Now, all the projects are obviously within, or the residents are within these established low income and disadvantaged communities. But if there's portions of counties that maybe aren't quite yet, so that's something we can take a look at and let you know.
Right, and my question really comes because I was struck about how many units are still remaining in the AB 617 program, where we actually don't we have a funded partner that's helping us outreach there, or we don't? Yeah. So we just have the general outreach. I mean, I'm just trying to figure out what else do we need to be doing in those particular communities.
I'll just say one thing on this, and then Jess can add a lot more to it if she would like, unless I cover the general response on that. But Fresno and Shafter, just generally speaking, the three different 617 the communities that have this allocation, Fresno and Shafter have been relatively strong in their demand. Shafter's actually not a large community, and they've had hundreds of residents already participate. Stockton, we actually have an action plan that we're working on right now in Stockton that involves paid social media, but also working with community-based organizations and local partners, and already have commitments from board members to help get the word out. And so there's an action plan to get
Feels like it would
to get
be
that
just
going.
a really cool summer job to just pick some young people to go door to door. Honestly, that feels like
there are some unique
given
issues.
the scale.
There are some unique issues at times in the northern markets, just from whether it's TV or other. There's kind of a lumping of that region into Sacramento market. So it's just a little that the approach is a bit different up in the northernmost portions of the valley, but the demand does need to get stronger there, and it's been interesting to see that it has been a little bit of a slower uptick up in the I should say San Joaquin County area, not necessarily in Stockton. So we are working on that, and again, and this is something that we'll be looking at within each of those communities as well, is that we're not going to let funding not be spent. And so at some point, depending on where demand is in those programs, we're going to be having those conversations about shifting those funds into other emission reduction projects. But of course, we're going to give it a go and work with the community to see how much demand we can get. But at a point in time, if those funds aren't expended, we're going to be moving into other projects
Are
as well.
you collecting data where did you hear about this program kind of thing?
Not sure.
I'm not. We are collecting a lot of good demographic data about folks. So that is a good question, and certainly if we aren't, maybe that's a great
next update too.
A great addition, and probably an easy one, right? It's just another question on the portal. And then one thing I wanted to clarify so that folks know, we are differentiating, to your point, whether it's the 617 program or the Valley-wide, but we're not asking folks to go to a different portal or anything. It's just when they put in their address, we know on the back end.
Right.
So we're making it very streamlined, and I just want folks to make sure that they know it's just one stop that they can go to apply.
Beautiful, thank you.
Perfect, thank you. Member Escutia Braden.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, what a fantastic program. I'm so glad that we were able to do this again and make it available to our Valley community. This is what number year that we're doing this program?
This is actually the first time outside of it being a pilot program just last June.
Okay.
So really this is our first launch Valley-wide outside a much smaller allocation last year.
So when we did the pilot project, did we collect data at that time in terms of?
Yeah.
Oh, we did. So I'm wondering if has there been a conversation or a thought that we might, as opposed to just putting it out there for general consumption, to apply a targeted effort to those that received the unit last year, perhaps reaching out to them and asking them, since we already know they were a good fit to receive the unit, maybe receiving it again this year if there's any interest.
Right now, the way we
thought about doing that.
Right now, the way we've been running the program, in order to maximize the number of people across the Valley who get a device, anyone who received one last time has been ineligible this time so far, just based on program demand. And last time they also did receive a unit and an air filter as well. And so we're just trying, I think at this point, to make sure that we have additional folks that are able to get into the program. But
No, one other thing I just wanted to add to that is you do have this sort of a captive audience, if you will, of participants that we can always reach back out to get, say, information about how they heard about the program, you know, if there's other useful information regarding the household and the use or need of the device, and other, for example, in the pilots, we had a healthy discussion here about collecting a few health related data points that we were able to integrate into the process during the pilot that we've carried over into this process. So we do, even though we've provided these devices to a number of residents already, we can always kind of go back out and conduct little surveys. And so it is useful to know where there may be some interest in gathering some data. And so to your point, maybe we could do that. And to the question that Dr. Pacheco-Werner had raised, you know, we are able to go back. So just wanted to note that.
Fantastic. My last question is, in regards to those counties with modest participation and still have sizable number of units available, what will happen to those units if and when there might be any left over? Will they be transferred to other more high demand counties, or what's the thought on that?
That's a great question. We do have the authority to shift funding at some point if we're not able to get demand in a certain county. I can tell you that our goal is going to be for every single county to fully expend their funds. Now there is that ability to shift funds so that we don't let funding and units, you know, not get out to residents. But you know, the threshold is high to get to that point. You know, so tomorrow we're not going to say, hey, in this county, let's just move the money over to some other county. So now there hasn't been any real specifics laid out as to exactly how long that effort is, you know, but I can just assure you that the goal is to make sure every county expends their funds.
Great, thank you. Keep up the good work.
And there really shouldn't be any excuse for those funds not to be expended. It's in the 617 areas that we're going to struggle more, I think, but it shouldn't. Again, we have to get the word out. That's incumbent upon us. And I will point out that at the Modesto City Council meeting, member Escutia Braden had a prop up there. She had actually one of the filters up there as she was pitching it. So I appreciate that. All right, to member McCauley.
Thank you, Chair. Just had a quick question in regards to qualification for the program. I know we use the disadvantaged and low income criteria there. Is there a reason that we're not able to use just the income qualifier for an individual house? I guess my concern lays, you know, very close with what Member Bessinger had expressed earlier. You know, for low income folks that do not reside in a disadvantaged community. I know sometimes depending on which tool you're using, a community may or may not have that qualification. Specifically looking at communities like North Fork, you know, where we have very high fire severity risks, and we often see wildfires on an annual basis. But at times that community does not have that particular designation for a disadvantaged community. But, you know, I know from living there that there are, you know, quite a few disadvantaged folks, particularly within our tribal community. So just wanted to make that known. Thank you.
Mr. To the Chair, if I could respond. And this is a very important question and point that was raised by Councilmember Bessinger and now by Supervisor McCauley that I wanted to address and see if we can get some consensus direction on how to look at this. Because I think it's a very key issue and something that we definitely would want to look at and take into account perhaps in the next round of this program. We do think that there is an ability to, in a fairly streamlined manner, add eligibility into the program, say based on strictly on income qualification, not necessarily due to where you may reside, based on these various tools that are used, CalEnviro Screen, EJ Screen. Perhaps you could use some sort of if you're already qualifying under another income qualified program and could provide some verification of that, you know, check one of those and maybe use the portal to upload that. We think we can probably work on this as something that we can integrate into the program There's some precedence for that that we can try to follow. So we would recommend that we actually take a close look at that and any other issues, maybe evaluate the performance of the program after this round, take a look at some of these issues. And as we think about this, whether it's the new federal funds with IRA or some of the other things that we're working on with the state, we are continuing to look at this as sort of an ongoing thing that especially if we can bring more funds into it, that's actually something that we should look at very closely in our opinion. So I do want to just say for North Fork specifically that and it's my understanding that because we were able to look at different tools, and some tools may include or not include different neighborhoods or communities. The North Fork is included for eligibility, and we've worked on that issue in a couple of different forums. But we talked about this from an environmental justice perspective. So we've had that ability to work on that, and the item has been specific in the past in allowing us to use not just one tool but a couple of them to make sure that we can take those nuances into account. But it's still, you're right, you could be a low-income household that may not say be within a certain established geography, and we do want to look at maybe opening the program up to that and recognize the valid concerns that were raised earlier and now with your question.
Thank you. So before I move on to Mayor Preciado, I just want, if anyone has an issue with having the executive leadership team look at something different, to open it up to all income limited people, this would be a good time to speak before we go on, because I think that's good direction to give, if you have an issue with it.
Well, I don't have an issue with it other than I think it's a good question. And so I welcome staff thinking about that and coming back. I just want to remind us, and particularly, the Cal Enviro screen is a more complete look at the health risk, because it takes into account not just income, but thinks about the cumulative risks involved in an area, including things like access to health care, other sources of pollution in the area. So it's a challenging question. We want to serve widely, and I think it's a good topic for us to chew on a little more. Absolutely.
Okay, so I think that gives you, and then I just want to ask in Modesto and Bakersfield if anyone has an issue with us looking at that. Does anyone have an issue with us looking at a broader scope?
No issue in Bakersfield, I don't believe, but I was just going to suggest that we focus on health status, possibly, of regardless of your income. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Okay, so now I'm going to go back in order. I think that just gives you.
Except I got a race, but that's okay.
Okay.
You jumped the line there.
Member Preciado. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, the question that I have is regarding the extra $1 million. You did mention that it's going to be about 5,000 more units to be allocated, but you also mentioned, just for clarification, it's not going to change the number of units allocated to each county?
No, so the same proportion from the percentage based on county population, that the extra million would move into that same proportion of funding. Yes.
So it will allocate more units to each county.
Yes, that's correct. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, and also, like, well, according to the nobody run out of units. Looks like everybody still has units remaining, right? But you also mentioned there is a waiting list, so has that taken into consideration?
I'm happy to clarify on the table on slide 3. So the remaining units, everything that's in parentheses, and maybe we could have done a better job of clarifying, that is negative balance. So that anything that's in negative balance, we did allow folks to be on a waiting list in case we did come into additional funding. Mm-hmm. Everything that is not in parentheses, that is remaining.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I also would like, my last comment will be, I will focus more into, people with respiratory health issues, because I think that regarding of income, they're the ones that actually need those units. And I know you said may have some data regarding that, but may require more work, but I think that should be the main focus, people who actually really need it.
Through the chair, I think that's something we can also evaluate, and we'll look for perhaps some recommendations from Dr. Pacheco or Dr. Sheriff. So maybe we can engage a bit on that as to how to go about and doing that. And then, of course, you have to balance that with means and, sort of in terms of just, I think there's some policy considerations with that, but we can certainly take a look at that and see if there's a streamlined and verifiable way of sort of, asking those questions, documenting that, and then the board ultimately can decide, whether or not, there's income considerations, even withheld considerations as to just from a means sort of perspective and where to focus the funding. But I think we can certainly, as an area of evaluation, we can certainly take a look at that.
Well, actually, I tried to take my name off, but
Okay,
it was
she's
no
been
help. But nonetheless, I am supportive of the income base. I have 2 air purifiers in my home, and they seem to help. Don't vacuum the filter. I found that out. You're not supposed to. HEPA. Hey, I'm Armenian. I try to, make it last a little longer, but yeah, you can't vacuum the HEPA filter, but if it's got a pre-filter, you can do that. And it's kind of interesting that, to walk by and see the light is yellow. It's like, oh, what happened? What's going on in the house? Or the dog walks by it and it turns red. So we know it needs a bath. But I'm in full support of this program.
The HEPA filter or the dog?
Thank you. Vice Chair Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I wanted to also throw my request in that we not look at just targeted areas as we do with most of our programs, because people of low income live in various places. Some of them live in their own homes. And with the seniors and people in the mountainous areas, even as far west as Los Banos and north in Stanislaus County and Modesto County, people have suffered when we had fires. So not everybody can afford to buy a filter. I have 2 in my home as well. Well, I'm not sure that one is a HEPA filter, but it's a filter and a charcoal filter. And so, fortunately, I can afford that. People who are on fixed income, seniors, can't necessarily afford things like that. So I think we need to broaden our perspective about how we target people when something affects everyone. Not everybody drives or not everybody can ride a bicycle, but everybody suffers from poor air quality when we have fires. So I would agree that we need to reevaluate how we look at distributing the air filters and who's qualified for them. Thank you.
Dr. Sheriff.
I look forward to seeing how the staff threads this needle. Obviously a great program. It's a significant amount of money. And it's not money that we are spending to directly lessen pollution, the risks that people are suffering. So I think this discussion about health is especially relevant, because that's really what this should focus on. Addressing our public health, and then we're wrestling with the equity goals here. In terms of outreach, would suggest doctors' offices and healthcare systems as great ways to, flyers about these things, to get them to partner, because they'll certainly reach the higher risk people. I think it is very important that we're collecting data about health backgrounds for people, because ideally we could demonstrate some kind of health effectiveness at the end of the day in terms of spending this amount of money. But if we can just, have some kind of measure about the folks that we're reaching, the higher risk people, I think there's a real value to that too.
Thank you. All right, I see no more questions. Check online.
Okay, are there any public comments in Bakersfield?
No comments in Bakersfield.
Thank you. Are there any comments in Modesto?
There are no public comments in Modesto.
Thank you. Are there any members of the public in Fresno that would like to comment? Okay, looks like we have a few coming up.
Hi there, good morning, board members. So my name is Jesus Contreras, and I'm currently a policy advocate intern for the Leadership Council. And I want to come in here and just share my experience with working with the residents hands-on. So I started about 2 weeks ago, so I'm fairly new here. And I was so unaware with the health issues that these residents face, and just seeing that they live about like half an hour away from my personal home, it's honestly truly heartbreaking seeing that they face more issues that I wasn't aware of. And being a part of like that background, that like just having that similarity in background to them really broke my heart. Just seeing that they have these issues that they face that I was fortunate enough to get out of. But I want to highlight just two residents that I did speak with. The first one, she was super caring, super nice, lovely woman. She invited me and my coworker Andrea to her home, and she just told us her story as to why they live in Lavina, for example, and to her family, like all living there. And one thing she did show us was that each person in her household has asthma, and she showed us the inhalers that are in the living room in case of an emergency there. And that also hits close to me because I do have asthma as well, but not as severe as they do. And she did highlight that they believe that they have asthma because of the surrounding area that they live in, and because they live in a community that's unincorporated. I also spoke to another resident. It was two older, another couple. This one almost brought me to tears, only because once I went up to them and just explained to them that I'm here to help them apply for the program for their filters, she broke crying to tears. She was saying that we're a blessing to God, that everything that we're doing and helping them out was literally an answer to her prayers, and that really broke my heart. I did my best to not cry in front of her as well, but just seeing, just us doing that door-to-door outreach and just having them know that this program is accessible to them does really make a big difference in their life. So I honestly truly hope that the air district does continue to allocate these funds and just supports them as best as they can. Thank you so much.
Is your name Jesus?
Yes, Jesus Contreras.
Thank you for doing that. You're the best outreach coordinator around. It's very helpful.
Thank you so much.
Thanks. Sure.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Andrea Uribe, and I'm speaking as a policy advocate for Leadership Council. And I know a couple of you definitely know who I am because I have been in communication through phone calls and emails with you about this program since it launched in April. And I just want to say thank you for all your time and assistance. And I know I really appreciate it, and I know a lot of the residents we work with definitely appreciate it as well. During the April 20th board meeting, I was here with 5 community members from Lavinia. They spoke about their struggles with air pollution and about the positive impacts that the air filters could provide for them. And although they knew that the air filters would not address the pollution sources in their communities, like Mr. Sheriff was saying, it would provide significant and tangible benefits for them. And they were glad to see the funds be approved for this program. And so was I. However, while doing outreach for this program, I realized just how common this story is. It seems like almost every home we went to, there had at least one person who suffered from asthma or other respiratory issues. And funds for the program went by so much faster than I anticipated. The speed at which these funds are being used are a testament to just how much these filters are needed. Additionally, I noticed that the reason attributed to this program was pollution from wildfires. However, the communities within the San Joaquin Valley are faced with so many other sources of pollution, including pesticides and dust lifted off while harvesting in almond orchids. Orchids that many community members live less than 10 feet away from, something that community members of Lavinia gave testimony to while they were here in April. And these other pollution sources also needed to be taken into account while determining how much funding is required for this program, because these filters will provide benefits beyond air quality impacted by wildfires. Which is why I'd like to support not only the additional $1 million in funds for this program, but an additional set-aside funds for unincorporated communities specifically. Most of the community members we spoke to would not have known about the program if it wasn't for direct outreach in their communities. And additionally, many folks did not have access to internet and didn't even have an email address either. And we had to use our own emails to allow them to submit their applications. When funds are first come, first serve, it places unincorporated communities at a disadvantage. So we are asking for additional funds to be placed on reserve for unincorporated communities, additional outreach efforts for unincorporated communities, and additional time to allow for paper applications to roll in. And I would also like to comment on the point of program demand by Councilmember Escutia Bratton from Modesto. And there's definitely an interest from folks who have previously received an additional filter who received a filter in the past to receive an additional one. A couple of our community members who previously received an air filter during the pilot program have actually reached out and called us again to see if they could apply for them, because they noted that it would be beneficial to have one running like in shared living room spaces, and also like in if their daughter works from home, they'd be like, oh, it'd be beneficial to also have one in her room or even like at night. Thank you for your time and support.
Thank you for your comments. Yeah.
Ma'am, I have a question. For the folks that live in unincorporated areas that don't have internet access, with Spanish-speaking radio, I mean, what can we do other than the public outreach, which is difficult sometimes because of logistics and when they're home? What else can we do to maybe get them more informed?
I think a week after this program was launched, we actually had somebody reach out to us from Radio Bilingüe, and I spoke to them about the air issues in the San Joaquin Valley. However, the program still hadn't launched yet, so maybe restarting like those connections, I'd be happy to, if these funds were to start again, to just reach out to them again to see like, hey, can you spread communication here? And also sometimes, like I noticed, it's difficult to have this continuous outreach when funds are so limited. I think the program opened Monday. We did outreach on Tuesday in Lavinia, and on Wednesday when we were going to do outreach in Fairmead, funds were already like exhausted and folks were already being placed on a wait list. So it's hard to tell folks like, hey, like these funds would be available, and then be like, oh, like just kidding, like funds have already been exhausted. And it's hard to build trust within communities and get them engaged. So
are there any other languages that we need to look at other than Spanish?
The communities I work with are mainly like Spanish speaking and English. However, I'm sure that as you spread out into other communities, like there would definitely be other languages.
Thank you.
Jessica?
I just want to thank Andrea and all the Leadership Council folks. We've been working really closely with them, especially in the Lavinia area. We took down all the contact information for the residents that did come to the April meeting, directly reached out to them, and in calling them and trying to assist them, they said, oh, actually, we already had some folks come to our door. So it was just a great partnership. And through that, we were able to directly communicate pretty much day to day last week with Andrea about their demand and what they were seeing, and certainly the eagerness of getting more folks into the program. So I just want to thank them and thank everyone for kind of that great partnership.
You know, and I appreciate like all the efforts, and also like I know that like not every unincorporated community has like a policy advocate or someone that's doing direct contact with them, which is why I'd like to push for more like outreach effort. And I know it's tedious, but it just seems that like door to door right now is like a great way to contact folks. And I know somebody mentioned it as a maybe like as a joke, but like I think it would be a great idea to have some folks or interns like going door to door, and like I think it would be a great summer job.
Yeah. Great.
Rockstar is more popular than a Rihanna concert.
It's Rihanna, not Rihanna. Don't you know that?
There's no further comments in office and no indication of online comments.
That's great. So I just a couple of thoughts, and you know, there's a saying in farming, when's the best time to plant a tree? And it was 40 years ago or 20 years ago, right? So it's producing, and when's the next best time? It's right now. And so we have money, and we would, you know, it's funny, the thought process is to get money out as fast as possible. And because the benefit either to the individual that has asthma or to the community, if we're implementing something that improves the PM 2.5, is immediate. So we need programs that are oversubscribed rather than undersubscribed. And this board, and again, the San Joaquin Valley Air Pollution Control has been very nimble in moving money around. I've done it multiple times while I've been on the board. And so we look at the 617 communities, and we have, you know, if we have to move money around, we will. But we want people in the queue, because sometimes money falls out of the sky. We have next year's budget, and we want to have those folks that we can actually go and deliver to immediately. So I love that we have set up a queue here in this situation. I think we're on the right path with another $1 million, realizing how needed this is. And this really, we have to get the money out, especially for the extraordinary events. Although it helps all the time, the extraordinary events are when we see the air quality get extremely non-attainment or, you know, bad. So I think we're on the right path here. And those are just some comments. And I'll look for a motion if there's,
Motion.
we have a motion from Member Sheriffs and Member Preciado. Have a second? Please call the roll.
Right, Mr. Bessinger,
Yes.
Mr. Couch,
Yes.
Ms. Escutia Brayton,
Aye.
Ms. Lewis,
Yes.
Mr. McCauley,
Yes.
Mr. Mendez,
Yes.
Dr. Pacheco Warner,
Yes.
Mr. Pereira,
Aye.
Mr. Preciado,
Yes.
Mr. Reyna,
Trying to beat this.
Yes.
Mr. Rickman,
Yes.
Dr. Sheriff,
Yes.
Ms. Chiclian,
Aye.
Mr. Chiesa,
Aye.
through the chair, motion passes.
Jessica, thank you for your presentation. Andrea and Jesus, thank you for all of your outreach and efforts. All right, we're going to move on to item 11, approve a contract for advertising and marketing agency representation for comprehensive multilingual public education and outreach.
Good morning. My name is Jamie Holton. I'm the Chief Communications Officer. And every year we come before your board with our annual outreach contract that we've been doing for about 20 years, in all honesty. This is really to support our clean air mission. Your board has placed, as was just discussed, a high priority on engaging the public, residents, businesses, public agencies, local organizations, and various Valley partners to enlist their support, understanding, and efforts to help us with our air quality challenges. We retain an advertising agency to research, develop, and implement a multilingual public outreach campaign. This is usually done in primarily English and Spanish. Those are the main languages that are spoken in the Valley, but then we also do outreach in Hmong and Punjabi. It depends on what we're doing the outreach for as to whether or not we target those demographics as well. We focus on things like our summer healthier living campaign, our winter residential smoke reduction program, a lot of AB 617 community outreach, and then in the last few years, lots of grant outreach. So similar to what was just discussed, we are continuing to go through a little bit of analysis and ramp outreach up as necessary. These are the outreach and education objectives that your board put together a few years ago, and I'm just going to read them because they're really good and they have held up over the last several years. Encourage and enlist the public to support clean air efforts and take actions to improve air quality and public health for Valley residents. Empower and inform the public to protect themselves during episodes of poor air quality by providing them timely air quality information, as well as scientific and comprehensible information on the health effects of air pollution. And then provide accurate and objective information about the Valley efforts to reduce air pollution, measurable results and achievements, and challenges that remain. This year, again, we are proposing to contract with Archer and Hound Advertising. They were selected through a competitive RFP process in 2021 to administer our advertising and marketing efforts that are really kind of the more traditional things, and I'll discuss that in just a minute. During that RFP process, they were deemed to have provided the best value and quality, and within that process, they can be their contract can be renewed for up to 5 years. It is an annual renewal. This will be the third of those potential five renewals. And at that point, we will go back out for an RFP. They are one of 4 different companies that we've worked with in my tenure here. That's either a reflection on how long I've been here or how often we change companies. I'll let you decide. They do work under our direction. They look at our overall strategy and creative concepts. They do production of media, commercials, and outreach pieces. They design some of our approaches for multiple target groups in multiple languages in 3 media markets. And as was mentioned just a few minutes ago, we do have 3 media markets in the Valley. And some of you are very aware of this, but it does create a little bit of a challenge. We have the Bakersfield media market, which is the smallest of our 3 media market. It's about the 56th media market in the country, and it really just serves Kern County, a little bit of Tulare, maybe a little bit of Kings County, but maybe Kern County, and that's just the Valley portion of Kern County. Then we have the Fresno media market, which of course is kind of the behemoth for us. It pulls in Kings County, Tulare County, Fresno, Madera, most of Merced, and then we have the Sacramento media market. And the Sacramento media market is San Joaquin and Stanislaus counties, but then it's also shared with the rest of Sacramento area. So us doing advertising in broadcast TV in Sacramento doesn't make sense because you get an awful lot of eyeballs that aren't within the San Joaquin Valley. So we have to be pretty strategic about that. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in just a minute. We also make sure that we're getting a fair amount of free media. I'm always a fan of the BOGO, that's buy one, get one. And we're always looking for those opportunities where we can leverage our dollars for more. One of the key things that helped bring Archer and Hound to the forefront during the RFP process was a discount off the industry standard commission rate. Normally, when you contract with an advertising agency, they're going to charge you 15%. That is what we used to pay back in the early days. We no longer are willing to do that. We pay 10%, and then that 5% is reinvested. This last year, it was almost $36,000 into the buy. We get that free buy one, get one media, which is about $160,000 this year, and about 10,000 hours in free agency work. These are folks that are doing stuff for us that they're not charging us for. We have a very successful multi-platform outreach. Those of you have heard me talk about this again. If you look back 20 years ago, we used to do TV, radio, print, and billboards. That is not the landscape of advertising anymore. So we now do all of that stuff, but we're very targeted about it. And then we also do a lot of less traditional media. This includes online streaming, whether you're watching your Pluto TV or your Hulu TV or your Samsung TV. We do social media buying now. That's Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, a little bit of LinkedIn for some of our personnel. HR needs to get the right people in the door applying for our positions. Native content and search engine optimization or search engine marketing. That's if I look at a pair of shoes, I guarantee that tomorrow when I go and I look for a lawnmower, they're going to also try to sell me a pair of shoes. So that's that kind of pop-up that you often see. We tend to do it during the winter season if someone's looking to buy a new fireplace, or maybe they want to buy Duraflame logs or whatever. We'll pop up and say, hey, you should take advantage of our grant program and swap out your device. We also, as I mentioned, have had to get creative. In the northern region, we do a lot of cable TV media buys. Through Comcast, we're able to say, we want to be on the HGTVs, the ESPNs, the Food Networks. I'm listing all the ones that I watch, but we're on many more. In those two northern counties, we don't do broadcast ads in those northern counties for the reason that I mentioned. In our central and southern counties, we do your usual ABC, NBC, CBS, Fox, Telemundo, and Univision. We can do that because we know that the population watching those channels, they primarily live in the Valley. When we do place broadcast TV, we try to do it on event or must-see TV. These are going to be sporting events. These are going to be maybe some type of live, Little Mermaid musical that's happening, or maybe some type of an award show that we think people are watching. They're less likely to record that and then come back and watch it later and then stream through the commercials. We also make sure that we're putting our billboards in those locations where they'll most likely be seen. I look at a lot of billboard locations throughout the year, and I will tell you that's become one of the most challenging things. Everyone wants a billboard these days. There's not a lot of inventory out there. So we work very closely with Archer and Hound to make sure that we're finding the best possible locations. And even then, it's a little bit of a challenge. These are just some examples of our outreach that we've done. You'll see many more of them, and I have a little treat to show you at the very end. This is the scope of work. I've mentioned some of this already. During the summer, it's healthier living. What can you do? What can members of the public do during the summer to reduce emissions and protect their health? During the winter, it's on our residential wood smoke reduction program. Lots of grants outreach. If you happen to listen to Hispanic radio right now, you're going to be hearing a lot of our outreach for our zero emission landscape equipment program that's trying to reach those small mom and pop landscapers that are often working in communities. The contract has them assist with some of our community engagement efforts. That's a lot of our AB 617 stuff, promoting our public facing air quality tools. And then whatever we might need, we also often call Archer and Hound in for just a little bit of additional support. These are the fiscal details. We actually went through a process a few years ago where we audited our outreach, and it was through a group of advocates, a nonprofit survey that happened, and it was deemed that we spend less per capita on outreach than other large air districts. However, we get more results than they do. This is a 12-month contract. It aligns with the district fiscal year. We have, as in the last several years, a budget of $228,000. No budget amendments are needed. Contract can be terminated with 30-day notice. It includes monthly invoicing, proof of performance. We track everything. Samir was asking me a bunch of tough questions when we were going over this, and I can even tell you how much money we're spending on TV versus how much money we're spending on something else. I can tell you what hours and what stations we're running certain things on. We also are doing a lot more analysis of our social media. We have a monthly report now that's looking at what social media posts, both paid and unpaid, are getting the most eyeballs looking at them. So we are on a constant basis reviewing this contract and making sure that it's doing what it needs to be doing. Recommendation today: approve and authorize the chair to execute an agreement with Archer and Hound to implement comprehensive public education and outreach campaigns for the key district programs. And real quick, if you'll give me just a couple more minutes of your time, we're moving into, per some of your suggestions, profiling some of our grantees. And we have a suite of what we call the Believe It commercials. And I'd like to show you those commercials. The first one, you previewed 30 seconds, you previewed it at the last meeting, but some of you missed it, so I've put it in here, but there's a total of 6 30-second commercials.
I'm Connie Young. I'm a retired registered nurse. I found out about a program through the Air District that would provide several $1,000s if I were to disable my fireplace and switch over to a heat pump. The advantage of a heat pump is that it doesn't burn any fossil fuels to run it, and it's extremely efficient. And this is one real simple thing that we can do to improve our air quality and our quality of life in this valley.
Hola, mi nombre es Alma Rentería y yo vivo en el condado de Fresno. Yo apliqué para el programa de cortadoras de césped. Es un programa que me ayudó a reemplazar la cortadora de césped que tengo. Tenía una antigua que nada más era de gas, así que este programa me ayudó a reemplazarla por una que es eléctrica. Tenemos uno que ir a comprar la gasolina y aparte que ahorra dinero, es más eficiente, que nos ayuda para el aire.
I'm Ivan Hurd. I'm a third-generation ag and livestock farmer here in Kings County. I went through the tractor replacement program, and it's a simple process. San Joaquin Valley Air Pollution Control, they'll help you do your paperwork. The grants are what they seem. I got a 165 horsepower tractor here, the 6150R. This tractor here is $200,000 new. It's slightly used, and this tractor costs $94,000, and all I have to pay is $20,000. So I'm living proof of it.
My name is Mandir Singh. I am a resident of San Joaquin County. I represent Advanced Trucking LLC. We got a grant through the Valley Air District. They were giving money for my old truck. We got a $50,000 grant. It was a great help to get the new truck. It was an easy process to start the grant. It was not hassle. And we were happy that we are part of a clean air source. We are trying our part to clean the valley as much as we can.
My name is Kelly Owens, and I'm from Bakersfield, California.
My name is Diane. I'm owner of Speedway Smog here in Bakersfield. The Tune-In Tune-Up program has been around for a long time. Not only does it pay for the pre-test and the diagnosis and the repairs that is emissions related, the end result is a past smog.
Money was a little tight. When you're smogging 3 cars, that expense can come up out of nowhere. With so many people around having financial difficulties, this really benefits the community.
We're the Roberts, and we live in Fresno County. We went through the fireplace change-out program.
Fireplace has always been a part of my living experience. We love it. We use it daily.
First of all, you're not putting particulates in the air. Second of all, it's clean. Third, it looks nice. The program from start to finish, finding a fireplace insert to getting it installed was quite easy. It just pays to do it.
And with that, I also want to thank you all. You've been just such great supporters of things that I've asked you to do in the years past. So I appreciate that, and we will be asking you to do more. With that, I'll turn it over to Samir if he has any comments.
I just wanted to also thank the board for providing constant direction in our outreach efforts. Those commercials that you just saw came out of recent conversations, great ideas. Councilmember Bessinger was one of multiple board members who have strongly, weighed in on the need to really champion the work that the residents and the businesses themselves are doing, and just really trying to connect that message, make it resonate more, within the valley, and just continue building on that momentum of getting the positive word out, and while talking about the challenge, providing actual tools for residents to access. So just want to appreciate the board for your constant direction on that. It's an ever evolving and a continuously improving outreach program, and that's due to the involvement and the great feedback that we get from the board, who understands your constituencies and always have great ideas. So I just want to turn it back to the chair and board members for any questions you may have and action on the item.
Thank you. Dr. Sheriffs?
Thank you. Thanks for that presentation. And I wasn't sure I wanted to see the advertisements, but then I saw them and I went, whoa, any one of those is worth 15 or even 150 with our faces. Absolutely. Very powerful. Great idea. Spot on.
Especially Buddy. Hey, I have people tell me, hey, I heard your voice while I was getting dressed this morning.
Anyway, the wonderful delivery, great messages. Yeah, keep it up. Thinking about the Northern Valley and the difficulty of reaching with some of the methods we use down here. Well, looking at the problem we had with the Clean Airs program, those are the northern, it's Stanislaus and San Joaquin, and you wonder, what role that may play. And I'm wondering, it reminds me, well, can we partner with the Sacramento Metropolitan Air District, share some costs for advertising some of the programs, some of the things we do together?
We have discussed that with them in the past, and we do have a track record of doing some of those things in the past. So I think it's worth having another conversation to see if there's any potential opportunities. Yeah.
Thank you. Member Sheckman?
Yeah, I think the spots with the regular folks who have received the incentives is great. It's good to put a face to Connie Young. We hear her voice all the time, and now I know what she looks like. So I appreciate that. Like was said, I get a lot of people saying, oh, I saw the billboard with you on it. So I was driving and it said drive less, but that's a whole nother, but yeah, you said it's hard to get those billboards, and I'm sure it is. You don't really know where they're going to pop up. I know my predecessor had one on the 99 in Goshen, and right underneath was the adult bookstore, which is kind of appropriate for him. But anyway, I appreciate all the effort that goes out, and it is seen, and the commercials are heard. So thank you.
Appreciate it. Member Bessinger?
I'm not sure I can follow that. A couple of these I'd seen, a couple I hadn't. I've seen Connie's before, and was like you said, we haven't seen Connie in a while, so it's nice to continue to put the face with the name. But I was very impressed with the Seek truck drivers who, if you know anything about transportation in California, especially in the Central Valley, the Sikh community they're all over it, and getting their face in this arena is a great thing. And I was very impressed with the African American farmers tractor piece. They're a large group that I think people tend to forget sometimes. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Chair Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You mentioned 3 media markets, Bakersfield, Fresno, and Sacramento. So the three counties that are in the north, Merced, Stanislaus, and San Joaquin. I know that on cable, we used to be in the Sacramento market, but now we're not. So how does that work out for those three counties? And I don't know if Stockton, San Joaquin is in the Sacramento media area or not.
So how it works is through Comcast, they have a program called Effect TV, and it allows us to specifically pick certain locations where we want our ads to run. It allows us to narrow the reach of our commercials. So we would be advertising, say, on one of those cable channels, maybe it's HGTV. We would be advertising on HGTV in the Sacramento media market, but just in the counties that are within the valley. Comcast allows us to do that through this Effect TV elements that they have. Where we can't do that is if we advertise on ABC. If we advertise on ABC in the Sacramento market, we're going to advertise on the ABC affiliate station that is based in downtown Sacramento, and we would have to have many eyeballs beyond just the northern counties watching that spot.
Okay, so I know that ABC, which is, based in the Fresno area, covers the county that I live in. I don't know how far beyond that. So you guys are able to work with them to get targeted areas, no matter, if it's in the Fresno or the Sacramento media base.
Correct. Merced's kind of the tip, and depending on where you are in Merced, you might still be part of the Sacramento market, but Merced's kind of the tip of the Fresno market.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Member for Pereira.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jamie, you kind of just answered it maybe a little bit, but earlier you mentioned the Sacramento market and the two northern counties. And of course, I represent northern Merced County. And so communities of Delhi and Hillmar. So do you target those on cable?
You know what? I don't have the map in front of me. It depends on if they're getting Fresno broadcast news or Sacramento broadcast news. And in some places, they actually might get both, depending on what they're watching. And, are they using an antenna? Are they using like Hulu TV Live? Are they using old school cable through Comcast? So it really depends. There's a handful of folks that might actually be able to see both the Sacramento and the Fresno TV market. So it kind of depends.
Yeah, I think Delhi is only the Sacramento market. But anyways, would you check on that just to make sure that we're hitting those communities? Yeah. Thank you.
And I do, Jessica Blanchfield, who is our account exec, is listening and on Zoom. We're not going to pull her in. I don't think we need to, but she'll get back to me with that information as well.
Thank you. Okay, I see no more questions or comments. Let's go online.
Are there any public comments in Bakersfield?
No public comment in Bakersfield.
Thank you. Are there any public comments in Modesto?
There are no public comments in Modesto.
Thank you. Are there any members of the public in Fresno that would like to comment? Seeing none, I do have one online comment. Archer and Hound.
Hi there. Oh, can y'all hear me?
Welcome.
Hi there.
Yes, we can.
Jessica Blanchfield, Archer and Hound Advertising. I just wanted to take a moment and just obviously thank the board and thank the Valley Air District for allowing us this opportunity again to work with you all. It's been such a pleasure over the years, and I just wanted to express my gratitude and appreciation for everything you all do. And we're just so proud to have the opportunity to work with you all again.
Thank you for the comments, Jessica.
Okay, no further comments online.
Okay, bring it back to the board for action.
Motion to approve.
We have a motion. We have a second. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Bessinger.
Yes.
Mr. Couch.
Sorry, yes.
Thank you. Ms. Escutia Brayton.
Aye.
Ms. Lewis.
Yes.
Mr. McCauley.
Yes.
Mr. Mendez.
Yes.
Dr. Pacheco Warner.
Yes.
Mr. Pereira.
Aye.
Mr. Preciado.
Yes.
Mr. Reyna.
Yes.
Mr. Rickman.
Yes.
Dr. Sheriff.
Yes.
Ms. Shuglian.
Aye.
Mr. Chiesa.
Aye.
Through the chair, motion passes.
Thank you very much. Jamie, thank you for your presentation. Move on to item 12, adopt the proposed amendments to district leak detection and repair rules 4401, 4409, 4455, 4623, and 4624.
Right. Good morning, Chair, members of the board. My name is Shiraz Gill. I'm one of the deputy APCOs here. And I have Jennifer Litterberger here, who's one of the compliance managers who will be supporting me in this presentation. So before I get started, just want to talk about the Valley's air quality challenges. As you know, just based on where we live, our topography, meteorology, we just have had unmatched air quality challenges. And then couple that with the corridor 2 main freeways that we have here, major goods movements, high population growth, pollution transport from other areas, wildfires and drought. It just makes it very, very challenging for us to attain those really strict federal standards that we have. That's why we have to continue to do more every time. And this is one of the rules that we'll be recommending for approval today. Over the last couple of decades, your governing board has adopted numerous attainment plans and air quality control strategies, over 650 rules and regulations to address these federal standards. And through that process, we've been able to reduce stationary source emissions for NOx by over 90%. And California Air Resources Board has also have a great suite of mobile source control strategies that continue to get emission reduction in the valley, in the San Joaquin Valley. Through these efforts, these combined efforts between the district and CARB, this does represent the toughest air quality regulations anywhere in the nation. And we also have, as you know, a very strong and robust incentive program. Over $5 billion in public and private investment have been made in the San Joaquin Valley. And through these collective efforts, Valley continues to make major improvements with respect to air quality. Now, before I get into the leak detection and repair requirements, the district has adopted a number of rules and generations of rules to reduce emissions from the oil and gas production sector, petroleum refinery sector, natural gas processing plants, and organic liquid storage and transfer operations. Now, as you know, there's a lot of stuff that's going on in these operations, and they contain significant number of components. You got valves, you got pipes, you got fittings, you got flanges, things I can't even talk about here. There's so many things going on there. And what happens with these components is over time, they tend to leak. And those leaks emit volatile organic compounds. And because of that, the district, California Resources Board, the EPA have very mature programs and have adopted regulations with leak detection and repair programs, which I'll refer to LDAR moving forward, to reduce these volatile organic compound emissions from these sources. Now, these programs include identifying these components, the number of components that are included at these facilities, establishing leak thresholds, monitoring, establishing repair time frames, and also performing record keeping. Now, the district, what's in front of you today is proposing further amendments to reduce the VOC emissions from these source categories. So there's a few reasons why we're making these changes to these rules today. The first one is a commitment in our 2022 ozone plan that was approved by your board. It included a SIP strengthening commitment to further evaluate emission reduction opportunities and to provide improved ozone level and public health. We also have another reason is the state best available retrofit control requirements. As part of AB 617 implementation, one of the requirements was through the state that all local districts meet best available retrofit control technology requirements. And your board adopted a schedule back in 2018, and these were some of the rules that were identified as part of that schedule. Federal RAC requirements, most recently EPA identified some issues with the state's COGR rule, CARB's oil and gas regulation. I'll refer to COGR moving forward. And they disapproved certain sections of that rule. They also identified certain reasonable global control technology issues for local air districts throughout the state. So these proposed amendments address those updated requirements included in EPA's 2016 control technique guidelines. So these are the rules that we have in front of you today. 44.1, 44.9, 44.55, 46.23, and 46.24. And the ELDER program, again, requires identification of components, establishing leak thresholds, monitoring, establishing repair timeframes, and record keeping. And these rules essentially limit volatile organic compounds from a number of source categories: steam enhanced crude oil production wells, light crude oil production, natural gas production, chemical plants, petroleum refineries, storage tanks, and transfer of organic liquids. This chart, this pie graph, just illustrates what percentage of emissions is coming from this sector. If you combine all the mobile sources, the stationary and area sources, this sector for VFCs represents about 1.6% of the total emissions. If you look at what jurisdictions we have and look at only stationary sources, this sector represents about 5.7% of the emissions. Now, the district also have a very strong and robust enforcement program, and we conduct a range of inspections and compliance to ensure compliance with district, state, and federal rules and regulations. This includes the state oil and methane rule, and we actually conduct inspections on behalf of CARB, the California Resources Board. If you see on the right-hand side, this is, we use the latest technologies, which is a forward-looking infrared camera, and basically looks at the heat. It's a thermal imaging camera, and you can see using really good technology what the emissions are that you cannot see with the naked eye. So we go above and beyond with our robust program to make sure that we're identifying these types of events. We also work with communities on understanding and responding to concerns. We partner with other agencies to support enforcement efforts and provide technical expertise and in-field training. And we continue to enforce, like I said, the state requirements in state and federal agencies. So after looking at doing a very comprehensive evaluation and doing an in-depth review of the local air district rules, state rules, and federal regulations, we're proposing the following leak thresholds and inspection frequencies. As you can see, on the left-hand side, you have the current minor leak limit. So this is the limit where if you're above this threshold, it's identified as a leak. If you're below it, it's not considered a leak. So it ranges anywhere from 1,000 parts per million volume for Rule 44.9 as high as 10,000 parts per million. And after going through a comprehensive evaluation, we're proposing a 500 ppm limit across the board as the minimum leak threshold. Now, for the major leak threshold is not changing. We're keeping it the same range, between 1,000 and 10,000. And the current inspection frequency ranges in our rules. If you do, some of the rules have annual requirements. Some allow after 4 consecutive quarterly inspections that you can do annual inspection, but we're changing that through these amendments and proposing a quarterly inspection frequency throughout. We're also looking at the proposed repair periods. As you can see in the current rules, it ranges anywhere from 2 days, allowing facilities to repair their leaks within a 2-day period, all the way up to 7 days. And most of the categories are getting lowered. There are a couple of categories that are staying the same, but we're going anywhere from 1 day repair period up to a 14-day period. And we're actually establishing new repair periods in Rule 4623 that did not have a specific leak detection and repair program in that rule. So we're establishing new thresholds in that rule. We're also looking at extended repair periods. There are certain time periods where an extension is needed to make a repair. And specifically for Rule 44.9, we are removing that extended period and leaving it alone for the major gas leak component. There are other proposed amendments that we're looking at in addition to the more stringent leak limits, monitoring, and repair period requirements. We're also proposing amendments to require vapor control systems for crude oil storage tanks that have a potential to emit greater than 6 tons of volatile organic compounds or greater per year, or actual emissions greater than 4 tons per year. Now, we believe that majority of the tanks that are in the district already comply with vapor recovery requirements, but those that do not will fall into this category. And this is specifically for Rule 4623. We're also amending the true vapor pressure for tank applicability. Now, the true vapor pressure is basically the volatility measures the volatility of the oil. Higher the true vapor pressure, the more likelihood that they'll emit more VOCs. So we're dropping that from 0.5 psi to 0.1 PSI. And there's an exemption or rule for 1/2 inch nominal or less stainless steel tube fittings that they are not subject to the leak detection and repair requirements. We're eliminating that exemption. We're also just clarifying language, providing consistency for definitions, removing expired language, and establishing compliance timelines. So for the leak detection and repair compliance period, facilities will have till July 1st of 2024 to comply. And for the vapor control systems, an authority to construct permit will be needed to be submitted to the district by March 31st, 2024. And facilities will have 12 months after we issue the ATC. Okay. So these proposed amendments, we believe, meet or exceed requirements for RACT, BARCT, and fulfill commitments within our 2022 ozone plan. Now, we also underwent a very comprehensive evaluation to estimate the emission reductions and perform a cost-effective analysis. So this rule is getting about a little bit over 1 ton per day of VOC, about 23% reductions from this sector. And the total cost effectiveness is a little bit over $59,000 per ton of VOC. We looked at a variety of different costs, worked with industry, we worked at with facilities, vendors, we looked at the carbon oil gas industry survey, and various sources for replacement parts. We wanted to make sure that we get the appropriate figures when we did our analysis. We also looked at cost factors from EPA's Office of Air Quality Planning and Standards. Now, as part of our rulemaking efforts, we also conducted a socioeconomic impact analysis, which is conducted by a third-party consultant, and it's the same consultant we've used for previous rulemaking, Eastern Research Group, and the draft report or the report is included in Appendix D. But this basically looks at what are the true impacts in terms of profits to the industries. And the impact was projected to be less than significant using board and CARB approved methodology. So health benefits and emission reductions are pretty important as part of our rulemaking process. As you know, exposure to ozone has been linked to a variety of health issues, including chest pain, coughing, throat irritation, congestion, and a number of other factors. And people with asthma, children, older adults, people active outdoors and outdoor workers are at a higher risk for exposure to high levels of ozone. So the district over the years, or the last couple of decades, has worked very closely with CARB and EPA to lower ozone precursor emissions throughout the valley. And as you know, NOx and VOC emissions are the key precursors to ozone formation. And fugitive VOC emissions at facilities like these may also contain hazardous air pollutants such as benzene and other carcinogens known to cause adverse health impacts. So further reducing emissions from these VOC emissions from these source categories will contribute to additional public health benefits in the San Joaquin Valley and the Valley residents. We went through a very robust and lengthy public process and with multiple opportunities for public stakeholders, industry to provide public comment. It was over a 3-year period. And in fact, the AB 617 expedited BARC schedule that your board adopted in December 2018, you could even consider that process starting even earlier. The public scoping meeting started in December of 2020, and we had multiple public workshops since then. And these draft rules and the staff report sections were all published for review on April 2023. The proposed rules were posted for public review and comment on May 16, 2023, and district worked very, very closely with CARB staff, EPA staff in developing these amendments as we wanted to make sure that we align with what they're doing as well. And of course, we made updates to the governing board meetings, citizen advisory committee meetings, and environmental justice advisory group meetings as well. So here's just some of the significant comments and responses that we had. One of the requirements was that these requirements are too stringent. And then the other comment was, well, requirements should be more stringent. So when you have that type of balance, you know that you have a balanced rule, right? When you have comments on both sides. So we believe that the proposed limits are necessary to address RACT, BARCT, and plan commitment have been determined to be feasible, cost effective, and most stringent. And another big question was, and comment was, have we coordinated between CARB and developing proposed local and state regulations? As you may have heard, actually June 22nd, they're taking an item to their board to address the CTG requirements, the deficiency as outlined by EPA. They're looking forward to board approval today. So no pressure, but the district really did work very closely with CARB staff in developing these proposed amendments to maximize consistencies as feasible. So once this process is over, there's still a lot of work that's going on in this sector. So the district will continue to evaluate opportunities in coordination with CARB, EPA, and other air districts. We'll evaluate ongoing regulatory actions on the state level and the federal level. On the federal level, EP is looking to strengthen their new source performance standards and emission guidelines for the oil and gas industry. So we'll be very involved in looking at what they're doing there. And once the CARB addresses the CTG issues and adopts those amendments next week, they'll be also looking to further evaluate their state methane regulation for oil and gas operations. So we'll be watching them very closely, and we'll continue to engage in ongoing regulatory efforts at the other local air districts to support continued evaluation as they are continuing to look at these source categories. So there'll be continued work in this regard. So the recommendation in front of you is to adopt the proposed amendments to LDAR Rules 4401, 4409, 4455, 4623, and 4624, and authorize the chair to sign the attached resolution. And I'll be happy to answer any.
I'll just a really quick concluding statement, Chair Keith and board members. If adopted by the board, the real next step on this would be to immediately, and building on the work that we've had through the public engagement process, immediately reach out to the affected facilities with a really robust compliance systems program. The goal here would be for everybody to be in compliance, with these regulations. There's been a lot of engagement, and we didn't spend much time during the presentation talking about that. But upon amendment of these rules, that's really the real key next step, is making sure that anything that's needed as far as guidance and resources to ensure that every requirement is fully understood, fully complied with. That's really the critical element, along obviously with moving forward with any necessary enforcement actions. But that is something I wanted to make sure was clear as well, that there are procedures and plans in place to make sure that compliance assistance is available immediately upon adoption by your board, if that's the action taken today. And I'll turn it back to you, Mr. Chair and board members.
Thank you for those last comments. Any board member questions, comments? Seeing none, I'm gonna go to public comment.
Okay, are there any public comments in Bakersfield?
Yes, ma'am. One moment.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Lance Erickson. I work for Chevron Exploration and Production here. I have presented to this board before on these rules. That was on April 11th, 1991. So by that reckoning, I'll be back sometime in 2055 or 2056 to talk to you about them again. The rules sound very complicated, but it's pretty simple. Think if you have a faucet and a hose that you water your lawn with. Well, when you turn it on, sometimes it leaks. Sometimes the faucet leaks. Sometimes the hose leaks. And you don't want that water to waste that water, so you go and fix them. And that's what these rules do. It says we have, as industry, have to look for leaks, find them, and fix them. And there are 5 rules being presented to you today, and mentioned there was also a state rule that applies to these components and an upcoming and existing federal rules that apply. So as you can see from an industry standpoint, it's a little confusing to know what rules apply to which components or pieces. One rule may apply to the hose, one rule may apply to the faucet, or 2 or 3 rules might apply to that faucet. So I appreciated the statements that we're going to be developing some robust guidelines, and I'd like to certainly offer to work with the district to come up with those guidelines so we're not confused as what applies to what and who we have to report to. All of these rules have reporting requirements. I'd like to do it once, not 2 or 3 times to 2 or 3 different agencies. So thank you very much. If there are any questions, I'll be glad to answer.
Thank you for your comments, Lance.
Are there any more comments in Bakersfield?
No further comment in Bakersfield.
Thank you. Are there any public comments in Modesto?
No public comment in Modesto.
Thank you. Are there any members of the public that would like to speak in Fresno? We do have one coming up to the podium.
Hello, my name is Nancy Richardson. In short, I want to say yes to everything he just said. That's exactly the way I would have said it. Just kidding. It's an astoundingly important body of work that is presented to you today. You're familiar with this because it's not a new subject, has been said, but it's as important as anything else that you do. And I'm really grateful that you do this kind of work with this kind of quality. So thank you, board, and thank you, staff.
Thank you for your comments, Nancy.
Are there any other public comments in office in Fresno? No, seeing none, there is one online comment. Christine Zimmerman.
Welcome, Christine.
Hey, good morning, governing board. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, I can hear you fine.
I just wanted to make a brief statement, which is, it's hard in 3 minutes to summarize what's been almost 5 years of consistent work and interaction and a tremendous effort by staff, all the studies that were completed, all of the careful work that was done, the staff engagement with industry. I'm sorry, I'm Christine Zimmerman and I'm with the Western States Petroleum Association. Got a little ahead of myself there. We had numerous comment processes and numerous workshops. We engaged both with CARB on their oil and gas rule, and then again at the air district level on these LDAR rules to make sure that the process works and that the interface between the two sets of rules is workable, consistent, and captures everything that it's supposed to. I'm going to believe that the district staff have come as close to that as anyone can reasonably hope to do with something as complex as this. These are not easy rules to implement. They're incredibly costly. They drive technology in a manner that challenges even the best and brightest among us in the industry. But we understand their importance, and we've worked very hard to be good operators and good agents with district staff in meeting these goals. The last thing I would say is the most amazing thing to me in what staff presented is that we have a greater than 90% stationary source reduction in NOx. You hear over and over again from folks that our air quality is consistently getting worse. I feel like it's not. I feel like when you can point to a number like greater than 90% stationary source NOx reduction, you've really accomplished something as an air district that as someone who lives here in Bakersfield, I'm very grateful for. So I encourage the board to approve this package of rules, and we appreciate the opportunity to have participated in the process. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Christine.
There's no further comments online.
Okay. Bring it back to the board for comments or action.
Motion to approve.
We have a motion and a second. You got that? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Bessinger.
Yes.
Mr. Couch.
Yes.
Ms. Escutia Brayton.
Aye.
Ms. Lewis.
Yes.
Mr. McCauley.
Yes.
Mr. Mendez.
Yes.
Dr. Pacheco Warner. Yes. Mr. Pereira.
Aye.
Mr. Preciado.
Yes.
Mr. Reyna.
Yes.
Mr. Rickman.
Yes.
Dr. Sheriff.
Yes.
Ms. Shucklian.
Aye.
Mr. Chiesa.
Aye.
Through the chair, motion passes.
Thank you very much. On to item 13, a verbal report on the California Air Resources Board activities. Dr. Pacheco Warner.
I just got back from vacation. I don't know what's going on. I'm kidding.
I'm not giving any report.
No, so next week, as was mentioned earlier, we'll have a follow-up amendment to our rule. And then also wanted to just mention that next week there is, if you haven't already signed up to attend, the chair and I will be at the Zev Ride and Drive event on the 21st of June. I believe at the Save Mart Center. Registration is free and still open. And so it'll be a great opportunity to see all of these. This event was really catered to the Central Valley, so the vehicles that will be there on display for, these are all like heavy duty, medium heavy duty vehicles will be on display very much towards what people would use in the San Joaquin Valley. And is just the second event like this in California. So very excited to be there and see the chair, and hopefully we'll get to ride and drive some of those. And
I've got my Class A. I'm ready to roll.
That's all for you, Chair.
Thank you very much. On to item 14, the Executive Director report.
Yeah, no, thank you. Just building on that last update from Dr. Pacheco Warner, I'll make sure that the whole board gets the sign-up information for that event. And if you can make it, I think it'll be a great opportunity to kick the tires on some of these trucks and maybe even jump in the cab like Chair Chiesa, who's got his license. So we'll get that out to you. A couple of other quick updates for you. And you've already received information on this, but just wanted to announce it to you and the public. The Zero Emission Landscaping program known as ZELI. The ZELI program is up and running. It's really catered for a variety of potential participants, small businesses, small landscaping entities, cities, counties, even farmers who maybe use some of the landscape type equipment out in some of their fields are all eligible applicants in this program. John Deere even has some options, for like a ride-on mower. The more we look into this, there's more commercial grade and available options that are eligible in this program. We have about $6 million total through the state to run this program. So just want to make sure everybody was aware of this, and if you could speak to perhaps Parks Departments, or if you have ideas on who we may want to connect with. These are just all areas that have potential use of those funds, and we are doing outreach on the program as we speak. I also wanted to just mention that we are continuing to look actively at the various federal funds, trying to pull projects together or supports Valley projects. So just more of a general update on that. But if you have any questions or need any sort of support as you think about some of these wide variety of funds that are making their way now down to states and local entities through the Inflation Reduction Act or other sources, we're here as a resource. I just wanted to offer that and make sure that if you had that need, just contact me, and we're happy to help. And then lastly, on various state legislative efforts, there is quite a bit going on there. You may have heard several days ago the latest budget proposal came out from the legislature, Joint Assembly and Senate proposal. Just a couple of the key funding sources that we work with. Just a quick update on those. That proposal included $100 million for the farmer program, so that the Senate had that in a prior proposal, and so now the Joint Assembly and Senate proposal includes that. And there's also funding for $60 million for AB 617 implementation and $234 million for clean air grants through the AB 617, the Community Air Protection Fund. So those are a couple of the key funding sources. Quite a bit of other detail in that budget proposal that I'm not covering here.
Samir, could you just repeat the number that's in the budget, in the Senate version?
So in this joint proposal,
Yeah, okay.
It's $100 million for farmer, $60 million for 617 implementation, and $234 million statewide for the Community Air Protection Program, and that's used for in 617 communities and Valley-wide for a variety of different projects that we can fund. So that concludes my updates, and I'm happy to take any questions from the board.
Any questions?
Yeah. I want to thank you for being Tom Jordan here in the last few, I don't know, we're going on 2 weeks now. No, but I mean, we're kind of thin on that side. When he went down, you stepped right in there. and I don't think we're missing a beat. Thank you.
Much appreciation. And just to clarify a little bit, I'm not sure if everybody fully, but yeah, so Tom Jordan, our senior policy advisor, is injured right now and is not, will need a little bit of time to recover. So just a note that, just make sure the appropriate level of concern was was expressed. And so he, if anybody wants any more details on how he's doing, please let me know. But he is doing well and better every day, and we're all rooting for him. And you'll have a swift recovery, Your Worship. So thank you for that comment. Really appreciate that.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right. Seeing none, we'll move on to item 15, governing board member comments. I'm looking around. Vice Chair Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, I wanted to make comment on a tour that I was invited to by our chairman on June the 2nd to the Coventa processing plant in Stanislaus County. It was quite a eye-opener for me. Most counties, for their refuge, they have it picked up and it's dumped in the ground and covered, and various gases are emitted. This particular company is an incinerating company, and I believe that they work specifically with Stanislaus County. Am I correct on that? For the most part. So the refuse is brought in, clothing, paper, whatever is in your trash can, and it goes through this. For simplification, it goes through a hopper that ends up burning it, and then the end product comes out as this black sludge, which I thought would be pretty putrid in smell, but it had very little odor whatsoever. So it's another way of processing what we as residents put in our cans. I don't know what the future holds because certainly we're running out of land to be able to dump and cover. So this may be a future way of how we deal with our garbage, and it condenses down to something that's quite smaller than just having landfill garbage. So thank you so much for giving me that opportunity to tour that facility, and I'm sure he would make arrangements for other people if they would like to be able to tour it. I wish more of us could have gone together at the same time, but talk with the chairman and see what's available.
Yeah.
Thank you so much again.
And it is waste energy. It produces energy based on the incinerator. Any other comments? Let's see. Member Rickman.
Thank you, Chair. And I just want to say to you, Chair, in regards to your earlier comment, if you go home today and your key doesn't work, you can always crash at my house. I'm at a large couch, and San Joaquin County will always be there to help Stanislaus. So that's it. Thank you.
Supervisor, Member Pereira.
Well, just to follow up on that, I would check your Ring camera before you even try to see if your key works. So June 24th is one of the tune-in test up programs in Merced County, and Member Lewis mentioned that earlier in her comment. And so anyways, just want to invite y'all to come down. My Portuguese celebration is that day, and so I won't be able to make it down there. But if any of you would like to come and rep the Air District, that would be great. Oh, good. I'm glad you're going to be there. Yeah. And then, and just for Tom Knox, within 20 miles of Merced Fairgrounds, there are probably 4 to 5 times more residents than there are 20 miles from the Las Banas Fairgrounds. So maybe 1 out of 3 or 1 out of 4 would be a better ratio than every other one. So anyways, thanks for the time.
Appears to be a cat fight coming in Merced.
I'm ready.
That's it. Any other comments? I just want to thank Supervisor Rickman for that generous offer. And if there's no more business from us, I'm going to turn it over. We do have closed session.
Yes, item 15, we have a closed session item on Central Valley Air Quality Coalition versus the district that's currently pending in federal court. And before going into closed session, is there any comment in any of the regions or online?
Bakersfield, do you have any public comments on this item?
No public comment.
Thank you. Modesto, do you have any public comments for this item?
No public comment in Modesto.
Thank you. Are there any members of the public in Fresno that would like to comment on this item? Seeing none in person or online.
Okay, we will convene to closed session.
Do we expect a report out?
No.
We do not. All right. Convening.
So we're adjourned.